Welcome to Community Roundtable. Here, we gather some of the biggest minds in community theater and some of the people who had some of the biggest impacts on the community. We gather around and we talk about some of the organizations and some of the people who truly had that impact on the community. Today, we've gathered 10 of the biggest minds in Bay Ridge and Rockaway and other community theater groups to honor a legend, somebody who, through all the kindness of his heart, did nothing but give to his community and to everybody who knew.
We go to Diane. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
Yes.
I just wanted to tell you, good morning, Rabbi. I just wanted to tell you how sorry I am about Tom Kane.
Yeah, let me just give our listeners a background. Tom Kane is he was a graduate of Xaverian in '76, and he was a staple, a real foundation in the Bay Ridge community. Literally bigger than life, physically as well as metaphorically, and a wonderful man. He wrote for the Brooklyn Eagle for a while, and just was everywhere in Bay Ridge you could think there would be Tom. And Tom has like 800 close friends and 8,000 second-level friends. It's just unbelievable. How did you know him, Diane?
I knew him because I met him several times through his group, that Brooklyn One.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, he always remembered me, and whenever I saw him, I got a kiss. And he just was a Superman. But the thing that I wanted to mention was that this week's column, you were the header.
Yes, I was.
You saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just felt so bad when I heard that. I knew he was sick, and I knew he was very sick. But I just felt so bad, and then you were the first person I thought of after that. So
thank you very much, Diane. And I know all of Tom's friends.
Yeah.
Thank you also. He was a great man, and he's going to be very missed.
Thank you for calling. All right.
I woke up, I thought that I was in a dream. Is anything really the way it seems? There's a lesson to be learned. I've learned it very we can go just to get away from everything, where we can be just who we are, and it's got everything that we'll ever need. So take a little time, there are sand dunes to climb. You won't believe your eyes at the house with the gorgeous of the Carolina sunrise. Took a swim. The ocean was extremely packed. Had a drink. That's when I got bushwhacked. But there's one thing that I know, that we are family. It was meant to be.
There's a place we can go just to get away from everything, where we can be just who we are, and it's got everything that we'll ever need.
So take a little time, there are sand dunes to climb. You won't believe your eyes at the house with the gorgeous view of the Carolina sunrise. It was meant to be. There's a place can go just to get away from everything, where we can be just who we are, and it's got everything that we'll ever need. So take a little time, there are sand dunes to climb. You won't believe your eyes at the house with the gorgeous view of the Carolina sunrise.
Carolina sun,
The Carolina sunrise.
Carolina sun,
The Carolina sunrise.
Carolina sun,
The Carolina sunrise.
Carolina sun. Don't sleep in the subway, darling.
Okay, and like I said, welcome to this inaugural episode of Community Roundtable, starring the cast right here. First, I want to go ahead and introduce one of my co-hosts, a man who has known Tom Kane for many years, one of the founders of Brooklyn One, Mr. Anthony Marino.
Hey, Eric, how are you? Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, Anthony Marino, known Tom very, very long time, and we co-founded Brooklyn One together back in 2006. So happy to be here.
Next, I want to go ahead and introduce my other co-host, my other co-pilot for this. He has a podcast called The Nothing Podcast, and he also runs his own little company called Coolside Productions. Mr. John Penapinto.
Hello, Eric. How are you? I'm John. You introduced me, so I'm going to be like, hey. No, John Penapinto, and I knew Tom Kane very well towards the latter end of his life, and he was somewhat of a mentor-y kind of, role model-y kind of person that I was very lucky to get to know for not nearly as long as the rest of everybody else here, but long enough.
Next, I want to introduce someone who you've made notice recently has been having some really awesome play readings going on and keeping arts alive on Facebook, Miss Marilena.
Thank you, Eric. Marilena, I first got introduced to Tom doing Jekyll and Hyde for Narrows Community Theater back in 2006. It was my first foray into theater at all. From there, he took me to Brooklyn One, introduced me to Anthony, hung out with those guys for quite some time. And here I am, working today for the Heights Players and loving theater, that's for sure.
Next, I want to introduce someone who performs with Tom in a production of Anything Goes, and also a new author, Miss Anne-Marie Brogan.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me. I, along with John Heffernan, we know Tommy from childhood. So we go back pre-theater Tom Kane. In fact, I could not even put theater and Tom Kane in the same sentence at first when I first heard he was doing theater. So I have a lot of great memories of Tommy from St. Pat's Parish. We were a very strong community, and I knew him just my whole life growing up. And then later in life, I had the great privilege of working with him in many productions, notably Anything Goes, and doing a lot of things with Tommy in theater. And I am affiliated with the Jeff Samaha Singers. I'm affiliated with St. Simon and Jude Players and St. Athanasius primarily.
Cool. Up next, I want to introduce the man himself, the man from The Wanderer, the man who broke the pyramid, Mr. Johnny Tamaro.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Eric, for having me on this amazing discussion that we're going to talk about our good friend Tom Kane. I met Tom Kane about somewhere between 1990 and 1996, and he was my Moonface Martin when we did Anything Goes. I was Billy Crocker. Anne-Marie was, Sweeney, and it was a phenomenal experience to work against him and feed off of him. It was amazing. That was the only show we did together. But every time I'd go see a show, either at Narrows or Heights or NCT, all of a sudden he would be there. So we'd have this funny little oh, I popped in and Tom Kane was at the same show I was at. So, but we remained friends up until his death. But he was a great guy, and it's a great thing that we're doing here. So thanks for doing it.
And now I'd like to introduce the celebrity wing, starting with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Michael Coluccio.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Eric. Thank you for having us again. Tommy and I met him in '93, and I guess ever since then, we've been friends. I did not know him before the theater world, like Anne-Marie was talking about, but I've known him since '93. He did a bunch of my shows, and then I, in later years, helped out with the Brooklyn One.
Moving on to the man, Mr. Rap City himself, Mr. John Heffernan.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you. I just want to say thanks. This is a beautiful thing that we're doing together. Like Anne-Marie said, I don't remember not knowing Tom Kane. I grew up in St. Pat's. Tommy was always ever present. And then we had a gap of maybe 2 decades or decade and a half where I didn't see Tommy much. And then he did pop up in the theater community, which was incredible. But I also have a sidebar to that, was that when Tom first got married and moved to Park Slope, he actually coached my nephew and my niece at Holy Name down in Windsor Terrace. So 6 degrees of separation. I mean, we knew Tommy all our lives. We ended up creating things with him later on in life. And he even played a role in my niece and nephew's childhood. I mean, Tommy affected so many people, and it was across geographic lines and demographics, you know? So thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm looking forward to this whole conversation. Thank you.
And coming up next, celebrating 50 years, Mr. Jeff Samaha.
Hello, Eric, and everybody. Thank you for having me. I knew Tommy very shortly, for a short time, I should say. I knew of him for many years, and when the opportunity came up for us to produce the producers, I could think of no one else to play Max Bialystock other than Tommy. Of course, we had to. I didn't want to be accused of pre-casting, so we did auditions and heard a lot of people. And undeniably, he was the best candidate, whether we chose him from the beginning or not. And I got to know Tommy very well during the production, and that's about all, because shortly thereafter he got ill, and unfortunately he passed, and it wasn't a very long period of time that we got to know each other, pretty much just during the play. Lovely guy. Loved him so much.
Yeah.
So Danny, you weren't here for the prelim. Tell us who you are and how you know Tommy.
Sure, no problem. So my name is Danny Velez, as Eric said. I actually performed with Tom in the producers with a Jeff Samaha production. I knew Tom, that's where I met him, and I was lucky enough to be a part of his life for the last few years. So I'm very, very appreciative of him, and I think it was a wonderful experience getting to know him.
Well, last but not least, my name is Eric Fitzgerald. I put this together just to honor the man himself. I only knew him for a short amount of time, and the first day I met him, he referred me to a barber, which gave me a terrible haircut. So that memory will always live with me forever.
I can tame my mane. I'm going out tonight with my man Tom Kane. It's true what he says, we're hitting 3JP. It's where I was conceived, it's the place to be. Knock it down, pints, they got the ill mugs. The one thing that I love is girls have no Uggs. Yo, finish the booze and let's talk issues. Listen, baby Callum, I'll show you be. I'm working on a plan and I'm bringing the heat. The rich is great, but in the fun we like. This neighborhood needs a laser tag.
Mayor Bayriz, he's the man for you, making our neighborhood and streets like new. He's our eyes from the sky. His favorite place to go is Nellie Bly.
So, like I said, we are here to honor the man himself, and we're going to tell some stories. We're going to sit back, enjoy. We're going to do some cutaways. You guys are going to see some video. You guys are going to see some pictures, and we're going to have some fun here. So let's start, and let's go ahead with the topics. First of all, let's talk about Tom in his early years. I know some of you didn't know him very long, but I know a lot of you knew him a very long time. So let's go ahead and just start with Tom in his early years. Who can give us a little backstory on Tom prior to becoming the celebrity and the mayor?
He was a sports guy in the neighborhood. He worked in the stock market in the 80s when it was the stock market. You know, he had glorious tales of working on the floor. And all the people he used to meet. He had some photos of him and like Keith Hernandez and stuff. And, you know, he was a big Red Sox guy, but he worked on the floor of the stock exchange with guys like Eddie Mayrose and stuff. And, you know, he was coaching a lot. You know, I think creativity was always a part, but there's a whole other Tom Kane that, you know, you could have a whole other discussion with 20 other people that just to talk sports and his involvement in the community with sports and stuff. So, I mean, that's kind of like what I know about him and the stories that he used to tell me before he started doing the theater stuff. I'm sure you guys probably have some of the same memories or same stories that he told you guys.
So you're telling me a Red Sox fan was able to survive in
He was the
New
only
York?
Red Sox fan. He was the only Red Sox fan allowed in New York City. I mean, there was that was it. I mean, that was his team. You knew it was his team. And I mean, I watched the Red Sox win the World Series with him at Kettle Black. And I mean, the Jameson was flowing that night. I mean, it was everybody was happy for him. You know, for him, it was like a testimony. But yeah, I mean, a Red Sox fan was allowed to survive and thrive in Brooklyn for sure because it was Tom.
That was going to be my next question. Was did he get to see them win the World Series?
Yeah, the first time they won. I forget what year that was. Coluccio, you probably know better than I do.
1913.
No, after that. the second time.
2004.
2000. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so 2004. So yeah, we were at Kettle Black that night, God, yeah, his sister Kim was there. It was a great time. The place was celebrating. It was odd, right? Because here we are in Brooklyn, New York, and we're celebrating the Red Sox win, but because it was because of him. You know, it was because of him. So.
Anne-Marie, you got anything?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, again, St. Pat's was it's a very, very strong community. Bay Ridge and St. Pat's. St. Pat's is like a little microcosm of Bay Ridge. It's kind of synonymous Bay Ridge, and everybody knew Tommy Kane. Tommy was older than I was, so we did not, you know, we were not in classes together or anything like that. But he was always a fixture. We had a teen club. We had a very big sports program, which my father was the treasurer of, even though I am an only child and a girl. He was the treasurer of the Little League. He was very instrumental in building the ball field that all the kids in the Little League play. And Tommy was a coach and mentor and friend to, I think, the entire population of St. Patrick's. It was unbelievable. It was very hard to be in Bay Ridge and not know him. And he was a very positive role model. And everybody would always go to him. He was like the go-to person.
He was the commissioner, I believe. At one, they had a commissioner position for the Little League, and I'm sure he was the commissioner. I remember him talking about being the commissioner for some time. Which, again, like Anne-Marie said, the community was so tight and the programs were so strong. Back then, it meant something to have that, you know, to have that kind of influence and to keep these programs going. So he was, you know, he was influential.
Very,
yeah.
And I'm sure John can speak to that as well. Were you guys in the same year, John?
No, in fact, Tommy, I think I'm only 2 years ahead of you, Anne-Marie, and I think Tommy was 4 ahead of me.
Okay.
But as we said, and as Anthony just noted, he was the commissioner of St. Patrick's Little League, but as such a young man, because if you think about this, when I was playing ball, you know, Artie Mayrose was the commissioner, you know, so, and he is more along the line of my father's age, you know, because Artie's about 80 now. But Tommy took that role at an early age, and the people that he coached never left him. That was the thing with Tom. Tom would coach a bunch of kids in 1 year, and if you look at the pictures of their wedding, Tom is in the wedding or in the wedding party of these people 8-10 years after their stint with him as a player. So Tommy coached baseball for St. Patrick's, was the commissioner of the league, as Anthony had said, and was also a basketball coach for St. Patrick's.
Yeah.
And then, as I told you, when he moved to Holy Name briefly, he became Tom Kane of Holy Name, you know. And I think it's important from what Anne-Marie said. St. Pat's is a very tight community, and it still is. You see a lot of the first responder work, things that are going on right now, feeding the people, Love Conquers Cancer. They are all St. Patrick's people, every one of those people. And those were the kids spearheading this, the Casatellis, the Kevin Andersons of the world. All these guys were ball players for Tommy Kane. And if you look back in their history, you'll see Tom Kane at everyone's wedding. Right?
Yeah, the photo that I gave you, Eric, that you used for the ad for this, that is a photo of Tom officiating Tommy Casatelli's wedding. And so Tommy Casatelli was he played Little League and stuff. Tom was his coach. Tom would later go on to help the Casatellis build Kettle Black. So it was Fitzpatrick's, and then when they took over Fitzpatrick's and turned it into Kettle Black, Tom was there. I remember I would go into Kettle Black before it was open. I'd be helping out because Tom would be in there. Hey, Marino, grab that. I'm like, all right, what do you need me to do? Whatever. We were hanging out, and he tended bar there for a while. This is all because, to go back to, he was a coach. These are people that didn't know Tom in an artistic way. We would be surprised. People might be surprised. Wow, Tom is into sports. They would be surprised. Oh, wow, Tom did the arts, right? It's the opposite sort of thing. But that was just, it's like all encompassing. So like John said, yeah, they didn't leave him. It was one of those things where, people stayed with him from Little League on.
When he died, I wrote an article. I remember the title. I called it The Renaissance Man. And it's exactly for the reason Anthony just said, because he was involved in so many things that a lot of us didn't know about collectively. And when you think about his life as a whole, he did so many things: sports, arts, financial, whatever it may be. True Renaissance man.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
he really cared. He really cared. And when he made a friend, if you were his friends, you were his friend, and he was there always. He would never forget you, and he would always just be there.
Yeah.
It's funny because prior to getting to know the gentleman, you everybody heard the name. Everybody knows the man before they meet him, and that's the beauty of it. What do you guys think? And we could just go around and just pop it around. Where do you think the legacy of the man, the name Tom Kane, came from? Really, just his care, other than just his care for the community.
I mean, he's 6'4", 320 pounds, with a bellowing Jackie Gleason voice. I mean, he was destined for legends. I mean, you walk into tomorrow, Heffernan. I mean, it was if he knew you, he would call you out from across an auditorium, and you would hear his voice, and you're like, "Oh, Kane's here. All right, let me go." So I think even if he did nothing but just live in Bay Ridge, let's say he wasn't involved in all this stuff, I think he was probably destined to have some sort of notoriety and be the local celebrity that he just obviously he took it. He was involved, so it just it spread even more.
Anthony, he also created traditions that held strong, like his annual Two Toms dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah.
Like he had
Two Toms.
He had traditions for each group. Like he was solid with us because we were the original Brooklyn One was you and him, and I was on the board with you guys. But he created traditions on the sports end as well. So all these fellows that he influenced throughout his life, they kept in touch year after year on certain dates where they would celebrate. So, I mean, not only was he just this legend himself, he kept the traditions going. And
yes, the yearly knucklehead dinner at Two Toms was always
right.
Panapinto, you had your finger up?
Yeah, well, to Anthony's point, and I think that the legacy for him, from at least as much as I knew, it was always going to be. There was no escaping it. I mean, he walked in a room, and yes, he would, of course, make his presence known. But even if he didn't make his presence known, you just felt he was there. You knew he was there. That's the kind of thing. Just one of those people that has such a presence to them that you're like, wow, you carry so much energy with you literally everywhere you go and everything you do, that it's like, yeah, they show up and they're there. And they're not he was never the kind to steal attention from what was happening. But he just couldn't help it. I mean, he was there. You know, if he showed up at the back of the room, you wanted to bring him up to say a couple of words, like, because of course it's like you had to. Anybody looking around was going to go, wait, why didn't that guy say anything? You knew, even if you didn't know who he was, you knew that guy probably had something good to say.
I was just going to say what Anthony just said about how he used to introduce him or call out to you in a loud, bellowing voice is exactly how I met him.
One of my actors, the great Joe Narciso, who was my Jack in Into the Woods, was also working with a group called X-Act. And he told me, oh, you got to come see me in my X-Act show next. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum. He goes, and there's a guy in there that you really have to meet. I said, okay, who? He goes, this guy, Tom Kane. I had not heard of him before, but this was back in 1990, I think it was. I went to the show. I saw Joe. He was great. And Tom Kane, who was actually the star of the show, just blew me away with his talent and his energy. But I did not know him. I had not met him. And then after the show, he was surrounded by all sorts of people, and I was hanging out way in the back talking to Joe. And all of a sudden, Tom points to me. I had not met him yet. And he goes, Michael Coluccio. I said, yes. And he goes, you and we need to talk. I was like, okay, so you don't say no to Tom Kane when he wants to talk to you?
Whenever I think of TK, I think of Dreamer. And, I think that's still at the heart of the legacy. What was great about working with him was nothing was impossible, and let's think about it, let's dream it, let's do it. And I'm much more of a practical guy, so like that made for a very odd couple kind of relationship doing shows at times. But I always admired that about him, and I think that was, other than his friendliness and compassion for people, was his dreaminess was one of his best qualities.
So dropping down to Danny real quick. Danny, so you met him later on. What were some of your memories of hearing the reputation and hearing about the man and then meeting the man?
So I actually met Tom at an audition for Jeff Stamaha's production of The Producers. And like everyone said, he had that personality that just kind of, it made him the center of attention for everything. So when I first interacted with him, it was a little overwhelming at first because it was just this big personality coming at you. Also, to kind of add on, I was 19 at the time, so really going into this whole theater circle, that was a little overwhelming as well. But one thing that was really great was that Tom had this amazing ability, to give other people a voice, to make them comfortable. And to help advocate for other things. So I agree with John 100% when he says that, the way that he put himself out there, it wasn't for some self-serving purpose. It was, he used that to help others. And in my experiences in the theater with him, he made me more comfortable. I think he was an amazing person to just play off of. I know Marino probably has even more stories to say about that, but when we were doing this really big production, there was a lot of weight on Tom's and I's shoulders, and Tom was the best partner I could have possibly asked to be in that situation with. He really was. And the other thing was is that he actually didn't just close it off at the theater experience with me. He was very much, he reached out and tried to involve me with him in a much more personal experience. Some great memories that I had with him. We went to a steakhouse. I think it was Coluccio, myself, John, and a couple of others. Yeah. And he's just like, I'm just a random guy. And he's just like, hey, yeah, you're coming with us. Don't worry about it. And that was something that made me feel wonderful.
It was Embers.
Embers, yeah. Yeah, it was fantastic. And we went to Met games together. He took me to, because I'm a huge Mets fan. And of course, he's a Red Sox fan, and he would tease me, about how terrible the Mets are. But what was great was that we went to the Mets Red Sox games together, and we had that personal experience. He was very much a male role model, but also like a father figure. And I was very much appreciative of him.
Yeah, it's funny, and Danny can maybe speak to this, but we've had discussions about it before. you know, Danny and I and Matt Hunt, our friend Matt, you all know Matt, the three of us became very close with Tom at a time when we were only, if Danny was 19, I was what, 20? I guess we were 20 years old, and we felt like kind of frauds. It was weird. Even now, like being amongst all of you guys, I'm sure Danny feels the same way. It feels like we don't have as much to say because we were so much younger. And like, why were we friends? I really like, that was purposeful for sure. Because it wasn't just being in a show with him. Like I said, you know, we've all been in shows with a lot of people, but we did producers with him, and then it definitely carried on after that. I mean, for years after producers, we would go out to dinners, like Danny said, and we would go to events and just kind of catch up and just drive around Bay Ridge. Like, and I guess I never thought about it, but you had to know that he formed that relationship with us purposefully, because there's no reason why he would have needed to hang out with these 20-year-olds at that time, you know? So I think he did kind of become like I said before, sort of like a mentorish type of a role for us young guys, doing theater and things like that. And I know he gave me a lot of great advice, and I have so many great memories of when we first met. And Jeff can speak to this as well. Like, you know, doing producers, that was a huge role for him. And of course, we've all done shows before, and like, it's not an easy role. And it wasn't always an easy experience doing that show, because we all had different sensibilities and we were all such different ages. And so I think Danny and TK and I bonded over that as well, because it was our first experience together. Was not an easy one. It was a lot of work to pull that show off. And I think our relationship kind of came from that and just expanded.
I just wanted to, I mean, I'm listening to what all of you are saying, and it really is like warming my heart, because I could piggyback on so much of that. I kind of view Tommy as a great connector. Yeah, I really do. I think he was always looking for ways to connect us. He was very much, and I'm going to date myself with this, he's like Mickey Rooney. It's like, let's do a show, or how can we go out and do this and collaborate? And he always wanted to kind of bring people together. And I'm very struck by how you guys are expressing yourself about how he made you feel. I think, Anthony, you might remember this. I'm not sure, because so much was going on at the time that he passed, but we all had to write something about Tommy. And I remember trying to think of the words to express, in a short kind of little thing, what I could say about him. And I remember thinking that what struck me about him is when you spoke to him, even if you were talking to him about something he did, he somehow made you feel like you were the most important thing in the world. And that somehow you were touching him. Even when you were trying to talk to him about him, he somehow made you feel like you were just the most spectacular thing that he was experiencing. That's how he made you feel. And I think that is why so many people were so drawn to him.
Yeah, we had those cards, right?
Yes.
You're talking about yeah, I made a video. I shared that with you, Eric. That's on YouTube. I made a video of that. I guess it was like for the year anniversary. I think that he, that after he passed, I made a video out of those things with some of the songs that he wrote. So, yeah, no, I mean, listen, I met Tom when I was 11 or 12. And he was they had announced auditions for a play with Exact, the Severian Alumni Community Theater, which Tom was active in. Before he was active in any of the other groups, there was Exact, and he had written a musical.
And was that the one, the Exact, where you were trapped in the cabin in the snow?
We did some spectacular shows at Exact, and yes, that was
one of my first times I ever saw him in anything, was because my sister was in that show.
Okay, yes, and so yeah, my mom found the audition notice at like the Home Reporter, and I was doing theater in elementary school at PS 204, and I guess we were just getting ready to do like Cats or something, like So it was like 1992 or 1993, something like that. I show up to this audition.
I have photos of that Cats if you wanted, Eric, by the way.
So, yeah, I
was just going to ask that.
I have a photo I can share with you dressed as Old Deuteronomy. I'm not embarrassed of it. My mom made that costume and stuff. I am perfectly happy to share that. But no, I show up. I'm all of like 11 years old or whatever. And, you know, that's my first audition, really. What did I ever audition for? And I walk in, there's this huge guy, and I'm 11, so he's even bigger to me at that point. And, I sang something from Cats, like Skimble Shanks or something crazy. And that was it. There was one role for a kid, and my friend who came to audition with me, Carlo, he got the role because Carlo looked a little bit younger than I did. I was always a little bit taller, a little bit more husky, so I looked a little bit older than 11. But Tom wrote a part in for me, and it was his show, right? So he could do that. So he wrote a part for me, and I played like the little kid's friend or something, and that's how I got to know him through The Life and Times of Matthew Ryan, which he wrote, which is his only full-length musical that he wrote. And that was incredible because there are some names that were in that show. I was that was Joe Narciso played the lead in that one, and working with him as a kid, and all these knucklehead Pat the Hat Baselli and all these people that to be a part of that, and they were goofing around, and the stories I could tell you as a kid. My mom was there, and we all got to know him, and Tom was just so great. And that experience was, that helped to lock in my love of theater too, because I was like, this is great. Look how much fun everybody's having. This is like an original show. I knew all the words and stuff. Like, we were goofing around. I felt like I had all these friends. It was great. And it was because of Tom, like his energy and stuff. And our friendship basically grew from there. We had a little bit, probably like a 2 or 3 year gap, because again, I was a kid, but I re-met him again at Severian randomly my freshman year. I was a part of like the AV club, and we were doing we were taking some video footage of an alumni basketball game. And obviously now I'm older, I'm taller, whatever, and I hear from across the room, "Marino, is that you?" And I'm like, and it was TK, and he was like, "Holy shit!" And we started talking, and from that was it. That was our friendship. So I met him when I was like 11 or 12. Maybe there was like a 2 year gap, basically, and then that was the rest, as they say, was history. We stayed close and stayed friendly ever since. But he was not the Tom Kane of legend just yet. When I met him, he was he had only done maybe a few shows, maybe Best Little Whorehouse. He had maybe just come off of Pseudolus with X-Act, so he was just getting his. And for him to write a play is pretty bodacious, I think, and ambitious. To be like, oh, I did this thing like once or twice. Let's write a show. But I support that.
So I want to take a second before we jump into some more stories, and I want to take it back to my interview that I did with Emery, and she mentioned how, especially when doing Anything Goes and trying to stage friendship and the dancing, that Tom wasn't great with choreography, and it took some time to get there. So I want to turn the story over to Anne-Marie and Johnny for some stories from Anything Goes, and then I want to then take it all the way forward to turn it over to John and Danny for some producer stories.
Tommy, yes, in my interview I had mentioned I had recently found the thank you note that Tommy had written, saying, "Thank you for your patience in working out." What are you showing? I can't see that. Mine. He was saying, "Thank you for your patience and coordinating this," because Johnny and I and Tommy had to weave around a lot, and he was struggling with that a bit. But he wanted so much to get it right. Like, he just wanted to keep working on it till he got it right. because he didn't have to do a lot. Like when we did Guys and Dolls together, Johnny also did that with us at St. A's. He was Big Julie. And so a lot of the action, even like in the choreographed numbers, it was like around him. He was just like, let's shoot craps. You know what I mean?
Just stand there.
Thing, and he'd throw the dice. It wasn't like a whole big dance number, but this was something.
Yeah, his thank you card to me says, I love you. Thanks for all your help and support. I feel comfortable when I'm with you, and you know how much that means. So there are times, though, I'd like to whack you over the head with my Tommy gun. But what are friends for? Thanks again and knock 'em dead. So the role that he played, Moonface Martin, and the Billy Crockett character that I played, it's the classic team in a show. And I played it in high school in '89. And then in '96, I got to play it again. And here's this guy who I knew, but I didn't know him that well. I knew him, but I didn't know him like Tom Kane. And when he came in, and like Anne-Marie said, the friendship dance was a little do-si-do around each other. And he stood in the middle, and we just do-si-doed around him. But the comedy that he would exude during the show was so natural and so spot on. It was like going to school. He was truly a comedic, like a giant. You know, his timing was great, and he was always there for me, and I know he was always there for Anne-Marie too on the stage. And 24 years ago, but I could remember it like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So John and Danny, what's it like trying to do the Guten Tag Hop Clap with Tom Kane?
Oh, well, that would be more of a question for Kathy Valentine for how did she get us to do it.
You will stay, you will stay. Excellent. But first, you must take the Siegfriedos. The Siegfriedos? What's that? A pledge of eternal allegiance to our beloved Fiona. Never took that off before. Oh, good. All right. One for you. One for you. One for you. And one for me. Oh, never one. Oh, I never won on one of these before. Oh, they're so pretty. Yes, nice colors. And reversible. Yeah. I know. Max, I don't think we should have ever started this. I think we're getting in too deep. I'll let you know when we're in too deep. I like the big one, the little one. All right. First, you raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I solemnly swear. I solemnly swear. To obey the sacred Siegfriedos. To obey the sacred Siegfriedos. Und. The memory of Adolf Elizabeth Hitler. The sound of the spirit. Elizabeth?
to do. I will say though, just going off of what Johnny was saying, and I know Danny and Jeff can speak to this as well. TK did have great timing, really spot on comic timing. But for producers, it's Mel Brooks timing, right? So it has to be that timing. And so that was something that he was very openly, admittedly, struggled with.
Yeah.
Because he needed to land, he wanted to land the jokes his way. You know, naturally, he had that. I always say something that I hate that will take me right out of a show is when you're doing a show in somewhere like a community theater, like a Dyker Heights, and then in the middle of, you know, Jesus Christ Superstar, you'll turn to the audience and be like, or in Bay Ridge. And I'm like, oh, God. Like, it's funny, but we can't just, you know, bring up Vincent Gentili in the middle of Godspell. But TK would do it, and it always worked. He would make it work. He would do it. He was the only person who I'd go, nah, he's allowed to do that. He could do that.
Only him. You're absolutely right.
But the timing, not only in the choreography of producers, but the timing of the humor was something that he greatly struggled with. And I was really too young at the time to say that we could, you know, work on it. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. It was Danny, 19, like, you know.
It was funny, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Danny, there was a scene in Producers where you guys came in after the party scene at, at Roger's house.
Right,
and you came
right.
the Indian cop. And you there was a line about one of the guys behind you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The conga line.
Talking about his timing. Do you remember the line? I can't for the life of me remember the line, but his response to you was so perfect and so funny. It was probably the funniest thing in the whole show. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, so I remember the event happening, and I think Maurice was the person in the Native American outfit. And talk about another person who's just has a wonderful personality, but he was basically what happened was we were coming back from the conga line, and I think I made the comment that that Leo, he enjoyed the experience, and TK, of course, playing Max Bialystock, is a much more aware than Leo Bloom, and TK basically mocked Leo Bloom, or mocked me in that essence, but then it was just so natural. It was such a wonderful moment. And in fact, my favorite scene to do with him was the one with you, John. And when Jeff started speaking, I remembered the scene after the scheme goes off. And I think when we're about to get arrested, and there's the moment where TK and we had a little bit of a physical comedy moment where I basically jumped on top of him, and I'm like trying to choke him because we were so upset. And it was so funny because he would tell me, I'd be worried. I was like, I don't want to, hurt you. I'm not that skinny of a guy. And he would be like, no, we're fine. He just wanted to get the scene finished. He wanted to get the laugh. And I remember people were just, the response to that show was something I had never seen or experienced since. And that was all because of him. I think John and I did a good job. I think everyone else that was involved, we did really well, but there was no one else that was going to play that role, and not to the degree he played it.
He, I don't want to jump to the end here, but he struggled during that show. He was sick. He was sick then, and I had many. He would vent to me a lot, and not in anything negative, but just the normal show venting. Oh, it was a tough rehearsal, this and that. And he, I'm tired, and I used to say to him, and I always think about this. Well, Tom, you haven't done a full musical in a long time. It's been a long time since you've been in a big show. I'm like, you're probably just run down, because you're working so hard. I mean, doing the producers is a lot different than running a one-act festival. It's different kind of energy. But he struggled during that show.
I could tell he struggled from the time he did the song "Betrayed" in the jail cell, which is a bitch of a song to put across by himself.
Yeah.
And he was huffing and puffing, and he was determined to get that song out.
He was determined, Jeff. He was determined to do the producers. He wanted to make himself proud that he could still do a big show, and also make all of you guys proud that he was able to do the show. I think what, sometimes that, you look back, hindsight's 20/20. You say to yourself, damn, Tom, go to the doctor or something. You wish you had pushed him a little bit more. But again, you just take it as, look, you get run down, you do a show, right? You're doing a lot of stuff. It's a lot of work, especially, a big show like that when you're on stage for every scene. But it was a labor of 110% love that, and he loved doing that show.
I used to be the king of old Broadway. The best of everything was mine to have each day. I always had the biggest hits, the biggest bathrooms at the Ritz. My showgirls had the biggest hits. I never was the best in any way. I used to be the king of old Broadway. It's good to be the king. My praises they would sing. A sing bells, oh they'd say. My shows were always filled with class. The best campaigns would fill my glass. My lap was filled with gorgeous ass. You couldn't call me crazy. There was a time when I was young and gay, but straight. There was a time when I was bold. There was a time when each and every play I touched would turn to gold. That's 2 weeks overdue. Such reviews! How dare they insult me in this fashion? How quickly they forget. I'm actually out of stock. The first producer ever to do summer stock in the winter. You've all heard of fiddling around? Go looking at the man who invented theater in the square. Nobody had a good seat. I spent my entire life in the theater. I was the protege of the great Boris Tomaszewski. Yes, he taught me everything I know. I can recall he called to me on his deathbed and said, Maxilla, alla mention until mine. Say, because you didn't what does that mean? Who knows? I don't speak Yiddish. Strangely enough, neither did he. But in my heart, I knew what he was saying. He was saying that when you're down and out, and everybody thinks you're finished, that's the time to stand on your own 2 feet and shout. What do you got to shoot to get a break in this town? fights again. My spirit's high as ice again. I'll never suffer suffering. I'll kiss the shoulder lights again. No plethora of fights again. The philosophy of fights again. The frantic of fights again. Pain is in my sights again. I'll hate those things fights again. I'm gonna still the fights again. The honest stock will be on top. I'll be on top again.
You know, his timing was so, I mean, we talk about getting the comedic timing. His timing was so great in some respects when he comes out and he's singing Betrayed, and he refers to his mother, and we played a clip that we produced here in my house outside on the porch, him playing his mother. And he had to mime the words coming off of the video to match. And he did it every night so perfectly. We'd roll the clip and he would say the words live to the video, mouthing it. He struggled so hard every night to get that right, and he did it every time. It was just amazing. His timing, I thought, was really fantastic. And that reference I made to Danny before, Leo says, Danny, and what a business. In the same day, I'm taking the Siegfried Oath and dancing the conga with a cop, a sailor, and an extremely friendly Cherokee Indian.
Right, okay.
When he said, Max says, let's smoke. When he said, let's smoke 'em peace pipe, I knew it was time to go. Which was Max's line, and delivered it perfectly.
Yeah, that's smoke 'em peace pipe. I remember that well. I do remember that well. Yeah, he kind of burst on with that.
He just, it was just a wonderful response to your line, Danny, and got the biggest laugh of the show.
I tell you, we loved the show, and I saw it twice. I thought it was a scream having polyprep. And to Anthony's point, we were more concerned about TK than TK. Because remember, Ant, we were working together on one-act plays, and you know, another part of Tommy was that, you know, he'd hand you a book. He handed me a View from the Bridge. I have it right here on my shelf. He said, Hef, we're going to read this tomorrow night. You know, that's how Tommy was. But while he turned his attention to the producers, he was in 1,000%. And we were concerned for him, because when I saw him, I seen a lot of exits and entrances and running out the one door. You just mentioned the conga scene. You know, there's a lot of physicality in that show for him. And
it was dictated by Mel Brooks in the script.
Yeah.
Every single move, you open the door with your right hand, you put your hat on the hook, and you turn and close the door with your left hand. In a way that was very helpful to me, because I didn't want to have to make that up every single move. And the timing of that was genius. And he struggled, but managed to capture every one of those moves and sweated through it, but he did it. And we were so proud of him.
Dear Max, Rio is everything you said it was and more. Uller and I have given you every chance we get. In the morning when we had breakfast on our terrace, many different herrings. And in the evening when we solid together in the moonlight. Sorry, must run. Uller's waiting. It's almost 11. Wish you were here. Leo. Just like Kane and Abel, you pulled the sneak attack. I thought that we were brothers. Then you stabbed me in the back. Betrayed. Oh boy, I'm so betrayed. Like Samson and Delilah, you're nothing but a fade. I'm crying in the who's got you're in Rio getting laid. Betrayed. Let's face it, I'm betrayed. Oh, have I been taken? Danny is lost, Leo is Iago, Max is double crossed. I am so dismayed. Did I mention I'm betrayed? I used to be the king, but now I am the fool. A captain without a ship, a rabbi without a shul. Now I'm about to go to jail. There is no one to pay my bill. I have no one that I can cry to, no one I can say if I do. Oh, I'm drowning. I'm drowning here. I'm going down for the last time. Oh, John. I see my entire life flashing before my eyes. I see a withered old farmhouse with a white picket fence. And I'm running through fields of alfalfa with my collie Rex. Stop it, Rex. I see my mother. She's standing on the porch. She's wearing a worn, clean gingham gown. And she is calling me. Yes, she is. Alvin, don't forget your chores. The wood needs a corn, and the cows need a milking. That's not my name. That's not my life. Somebody else's life is flashing before my eyes. I'm not I grew up on 88th Street. Leo, you've taken everything, even my past. My past, I'm dying ember. But wait, now I remember. How did it begin? He walked into my office with this clock and made me speak. You can make more money with a clock than with a hit. We can do it. We can do it. I can't do it. We can do it. I can't do it. Goodbye, Max. Lord, I want that money. I'm back, Max. Come on, Leo. We can do it. Step one. Find a plan. See it, smell it, touch it, kiss it. Hello, Mr. Lincoln. Ain't off Elizabeth Hitler. Step two. Hire the director. Keep it gay. Step three, raise the money. Along came reality. Intermission. He was in that play. Great acting. Step four, hire all the actors. A wandering minstrel, hire Vegas rides. And next, little wooden boy. Next, that's our Hitler. Opening night, luck. Bring a leg. I broke my leg. Springtime for Hitler and Germany. A surprise special. Springtime for Hitler and Germany. They'll run for years. Where did he go right? Where did he go right? Give me a book. Bang. Give me a book. Bang. Lousy fruit, silly actors. You agree with one? Then you get to Rio when you sit the actors. Long behind me was your banging all on the beach. Just like Julius Caesar was betrayed by Brutus, who instead of count would turn out to be my Brutus. I'm so dismayed. Is this how I'm repaid?
I don't think you probably remembers that my biggest issue was getting off the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
That was always his issue.
TK was like, up until dress rehearsal, was still on the book. To the point where at some point he asked Karen Tadros, our producer, I need to talk to Jeff. And she comes to me and says, TK has something he wants to say to you. I said, really? I didn't know him that well except in the show. And so we met in my car. And he said to me, I said, Tommy, what's wrong? He said, don't feel bad about what I'm about to say. He says, but I'm a little intimidated. I said, you are? Why? He says, well, you keep pushing me to get off the book, and I'm doing my best I can. And I'm going to be off the book, I promise you, in his big voice. And I said, Tommy, I know you're going to get off the book. Right, Dan? I mean, how bad did I torture you guys during rehearsal?
Oh, well, to be fair, between TK and Danny, I'm surprised that the audience wasn't reading along during the show.
Right.
That is so true.
Some coincidence.
So I said, Tom, TK, I'm sorry if I'm intimidating you. I just want this to be the best possible thing for you. And you're going to do that. You don't need to feel that way at all. In fact, I'm the one who should feel intimidated having you in my show and trying to direct a genius on the stage. And that he was.
I was just going to say that I guess I can say this now, but I remember those days, and he was very sick. And I was working at St. John's as the director of the senior program. And he used to come and visit me before his rehearsals for the producers. And he asked Jeff, I don't think I've ever told you this. He said he was very nervous about getting off book. He wanted to get off book, but he didn't know how.
Yep.
And I told him to talk to you because I said, Jeff, because Jeff wants everyone off book. We all do. But he felt like a failure if he wasn't off book. And he felt like he was letting everybody down.
Yeah.
And I said, Jeff would not think that of you. I said, just talk to him and you guys come up with a plan of some sort. And so he was very nervous about being off a book. And he also was very sick. And I used to give him injections of either B12 or of the protein cocktail that he was on before the rehearsals. And like you all pretty much said, I used to worry what was happening at rehearsal and certainly during the performances, especially during Betrayed, because it was so physically taxing. And I just prayed that he was going to get through it. And he did.
And I didn't know at the time that he was ill. So
he didn't know. No one knew. He was
He told me and Sister Kim, and he didn't want a lot of people to know.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact, he purposely said, "Don't tell Jeff," because he didn't want any pity. That's how he was. He didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him.
Months after the show, and I can't remember the time sequence between the end of the show and when I got a phone call. I was in Boston visiting my daughter with Marianne, and we were walking the streets of Boston, just window shopping, something you can't do anymore. And I get a call, and it's Tommy, and he says, "Can I speak to Marianne?" And I said, "Marianne's a nurse." And I said, "Sure, of course." I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well," he says, I gotta ask her a question." I said, "Tommy, what's wrong?" And he said, "I've been diagnosed with colon cancer, and I'm in the 4th stage." I said, "Oh my God." I just couldn't contain it. And I immediately found Marianne in a store somewhere, and I said, "You got to talk to Tommy, please, and see what we can figure out for him, whether it's recommendations or whatever." But I remember that so vividly and devastated to hear that, just absolutely devastated.
Yes, because he had an episode about a year and a half before, where I think he had a mini stroke, had some blood pressure.
No, man, yeah, I was in. Yeah, no, there were two stroke episodes. Well, I was in college for one of them. I remember.
Yep. Because at the time I was working at Victory Memorial Hospital.
He drove himself.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, I had no idea he was ill. No idea.
He did. The producers was 2009.
Right.
He was having all sorts of a barrage of medical tests and things done to him all throughout 2000, the beginning of 2010. And then it was like mid 2010 that he started really telling more people and stuff. And then obviously 2011. So it wasn't a very long time after the producers that things
Yeah,
you know,
it feels like that's the time frame.
yeah, 09, yeah,
Yeah.
Which is so crazy to me because, like, in such a short amount of time is when Danny and I were introduced to him and then became so close with him in what felt like for a couple of years, but I guess it wasn't. It was
no,
really
it's, yeah.
But I will say, just because I want to circle back to Tom a little bit as of what he meant as a performer to a lot of us. You know, he was, like you said, very, very proud of that show. And we were all very proud of that show. And because he meant so much to us, the opportunity came along a couple years ago to do producers again. Rockaway was doing producers. And I didn't really want to audition for it because, and Catherine Lieb and I, Catherine who played Ula, and I can say this, and you know, she and I talked a lot about it. We really didn't want to do it again because doing it with Tom meant so much to both of us, to the point that we even heard after the show was over, because we both ended up playing the same roles that we played the first time with Tom. And we ended up hearing from a couple of people after the show, like, wow, I'm really surprised you did that. I'm like, that's not cool at all, because that was like a huge decision for both of us to do. But when it came down to it, we the two of us sat down and we had a discussion and we said, if Tom was around now, he was such a supporter of performing arts and of us. And we said, if Tom was around now and the opportunity came up for us to play these roles, and we said to him, we're thinking about not doing this performance because of you, he would have been furious. Like, that's not something he would have ever wanted. Was for us to be held back creatively because of him. And like the memory of him, like that was completely off base. And once we thought of it that way, we were like, no, we have to do this because he would have wanted us to do it. You know?
Right.
I remember when we ended that show, Danny, I don't know if you remember this, he gave us, on opening night, he gave us pins, enamel pins of a broken leg. That I've gotten for me, Danny, Catherine, and himself. And I, for a while, wore it a lot, and I didn't want to lose it. But I wore that pin on my costume the second time we did Producers at Rockaway.
Yeah.
Catherine and I wore them every night. And we it was so important to us that we were doing that for him because we knew how much he supported the performance and supported us. And I still have it. I was going to wear it, and then it's in my jewelry box. I didn't want to.
That was your little guardian angel on your shoulders that night.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Right?
And we felt it. We felt it at the time, you know. But you guys worked with him. That was towards the end. You know, like Mary Elena, I know you worked with him. You said in Jekyll and Hyde, he was the
bishop, I think.
He was the bishop. He was the bishop.
And like that's the kind of thing that he did, to my understanding, way before he starred in Producers. But he would have these little roles that would stand out. And you would be like, the bishop in Jekyll and Hyde is like a little part. But then when I heard that he played it, and I put him and what I know of that little character together, I was like, oh, it's perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
He's up there and he just steals your attention. Well, steals isn't the word because he didn't want it, right? But like
he commanded.
He commanded the stage no matter what he was doing. Every little bit he'd be in, it was like there was no way he was ever going to fail, you know? So what were your guys' experiences working with him? He shows that he wasn't necessarily the front, right in front of.
Like he was Potiphar, I talked about in my interview in Joseph and the Dreamcoat, and a small part.
Yes.
And he stole the show in this tiny little part.
Exactly. And did he ever have to audition for those parts, or those were the kind of things where you were like, I'm going to make Tom be Potiphar, and that knew it was going to work?
I'm going to make Tom be Potiphar. Right. Yeah, no, he didn't audition for me.
Of course, you knew that.
He was Big Julie in Guys and
Yeah.
Dolls.
He had to have played Big Julie a few
That's
times.
it.
I mean, I don't know that for a fact.
No.
Only his lines were
Just once.
Really?
His lines his line was "Let's shoot craps" and Cicero.
Of course,
I remember that.
I remember
Yeah, video of
what
this?
Watts formerly was. That's
He was also in Oliver for Narrows Community Theater, and when he boomed out "Boy for Sale" as he walked down the street. Now that's a relatively small part in that play,
Yeah.
but he took that whole stage and that booming voice, if you can picture it in your mind's eye, of him, shouting through the streets of London, "Boy for Sale," he stole that whole moment, that whole.
He played. He's famous for playing Pseudolus with Exact back in the day, but he did for St. A's. He did Forum, and I think Joe Gallen was Hero back then. Walter Costello was a Protean, and Tom actually played Marcus Lycus, if I remember correctly. And his performance of Marcus Lycus was as iconic. He made it as iconic as his performance of Pseudolus. And I remember, and I think he played Marcus Lycus a couple of years before I ended up playing Marcus Lycus for Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I'm pretty sure I stole a bunch of his bits because how could you not?
I don't remember how old I must have been when he played Marcus Lycus with Exact. I had to have been
the Pseudolus with Exact.
No,
He was Marcus. He was Pseudolus in Exact.
No, but when he played Marcus Lycus,
yeah, St. A's.
Right.
That was at St. A's. Yeah.
I saw that show.
Yeah, you must have. You were a kid.
I had to have been like, what?
You were like 7.
Yeah.
But I remember it, and I remember him in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I think that was around the time when I was first developing, and I knew, like, that guy has a little part, but stands out. And I knew, even at that young, going, that's the kind of thing I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to play that kind of role and just command with that little bit, That's so funny that I forgot that I saw him in that. Yeah,
yep.
I totally remember.
Yep.
I mean, I remember you.
97.
So on the topic of Tom Kane, the performer, like we were just discussing, we know how community theater is and the antics that go on behind the scenes. So does anyone have any good behind the scenes Tom Kane stories that people may not know about?
I could get. I don't know if I could still get in trouble. I don't even know if I.
Yeah.
I mean I mean when we did shows at Exact after I guess I was in high school. I don't know, antics. Yeah, there were antics. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, we were drinking backstage. We were having a good time. I mean, Tom. Yeah, I know. How dare we? But no, Tom, it was always a culture of fun. It was always a culture of do your best work. But it was like doing a show. It was fun. He made it like extra special. I mean, and he always had a good time. Maybe he had trouble with his lines or something like that here or there. But I mean, you knew if you were doing a show at Tom, you were going to be in for something high antics and a lot of fun.
But then I saw how Springtime looked and ordering my ticket. I did both. I felt like Pseudolus with all that dialogue. Leo was my hero. Both our heads were in a block. Thanks to Moolah. Whoa, whoa, whoa. He was the nasty one. Who's going to take the work in third? Are you ready for the
High antics being something that, especially back in like the mid '90s when we were all like we were kids and it was a blast.
I'll say this: he acted as a Band-Aid for some theater drama for me, and I won't use any names, but he invited us out to dinner. It might have been that same time that we went out with you, Michael. He invited Danny and I out to dinner with Michael and didn't tell me who else was going to be there. And there was somebody else in the theater community, again, I won't use any names, who apparently had a real issue with me, with 19-year-old me, because of, people, you don't get roles, you don't get roles, whatever. And he didn't tell me that he was going to be there, and he didn't tell him that I was going to be there, even though I was 19. There's a distinct age difference. And we openly, because of Tom bringing us there, we openly were like, hey, I was holding this against you a little bit, and I'm sorry. And I that was not cool. and we kind of made up, and we've been great friends since. But because I don't know if he even knew Tom. Like, I don't even know if Tom knew that was an issue, but because of that, because he invited us to dinner at the same time, it ended up mending something that could have been really awkward for many years going forward. And yeah, now it's like probably not even a thing. I know it's not a thing, but it was definitely at the time like my first like theater feud that I was involved in without knowing I was involved in, of which of course there are many that I don't know that are happening, but yeah, it was really interesting. That was a fun experience.
Again, he's the great connector.
Right, exactly.
Right? And in your case, he was the reconnector.
100%. 100%. That was very fun. Yeah.
Who was?
And he was a squasher. He would squash a problem. He would squash a problem.
Yeah, he would.
And bring people together, like a famous sit down. He had a sit down with Tom Kane. One, there was a steak involved, or there was a big giant pork chop down at on Union Street, and a few beers. And then Tommy would bring you together, and he just smoothed it over because he knew that things were more important than petty BS. You know, that just wasn't Tommy. You know, I do have one regret, though. I think back. I know he did The Odd Couple with Michael, and I would have loved, and I hope there is a film of that we could possibly see Michael and TK doing The Odd Couple, because in my mind's eye, it's like so perfect. You know,
that
to
probably
see
was great.
There is a film.
I'm so sorry
There
I
is a
missed
video,
it,
yeah.
you know, but that must have been a great experience. And I also wanted to say that Michael, you know, we're all close. We've all done a million shows together with different things, different incarnations. But that last year, you were a real champ, I have to tell you. And it was fantastic the way you stood by TK, the injections, going to Boston to Fenway Park, Michael, when you made that trip up to Fenway with TK.
I have stories about that, yeah.
You think they would know the words to this song already?
Yeah, I mean, those things, you know, they make me emotional, but they make me feel good about my choice of friends, because I've seen the qualities that you have, and I'd already known TK forever. And, you know, we're a pretty tight bunch, the whole bunch of us. You know, we come from different companies.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, well, no, I mean that, because it's a
Thank you.
small-
No, it means a lot. It's very hard. I'm in the medical field, and it's like this COVID thing, and I've dealt with dementia. I've dealt with Alzheimer's. I've dealt with cancer. I've watched people die in my arms for years. You never really get used to it, but with Tom, it was different. And I think the hardest thing, I think we can all agree with this, is that the hardest thing for me during those times, you're making me cry now, John, was staying strong for him. I lost it a few times, and I didn't know how to stay strong for him. And I tried very hard.
But you did it, Michael, because if you remember, you had your office, you know, upstairs in St. John's, and you know,
was a little sanctuary.
Yeah, and I'd stop by and see you, and we would talk, you know, and do a little check-in on TK, and you know, it's just I just think it's beautiful that we all have this connection, and not necessarily one group. There's many groups involved here that we're talking about, you know, and it's beautiful.
You want to talk about how everybody knew him, even when we went to Fenway Park, which for me, you know, Yankee fan in Fenway Park, and he made me wear red. So as soon as we walked, and I had never been there, as soon as we walked into Fenway, everyone knew him at Fenway, because I guess that's how frequently he went there. So he would be they'd be like, TK, you know, Kane, and, you know, the ushers would be like, where are you sitting? And he would show the ticket, and they were like, no, that's not good enough. And then the usher would interswap for better seats. We never sat in a bad seat.
Our trip to Boston, him and I, for some reason, there was no baseball, but we went to see theater. He took me. We went to see shows. It's so funny. I was like, you know, I would have gone to a baseball game. It's okay, but he was.
Farley's fame. The crow's being still. Jonathan Kane. Pussy! Stop. All right, stop the comedy. Sorry, everyone. Now, excuse me. Lords and lasses, we'd like to welcome you here to our favorite place on earth, St. John's. St. John's, really? It's my play, let me tell it. Our play? It's our story. It's the story we have to tell. Well, us, meaning you and I, but also us, meaning some others. It's the story we're here to tell you, because we are here, after all, to tell a story, and you are here to hear a story. And you never know, it might come as something important to you. And tomorrow, someone, a parent, a mother-in-law, a free clinic receptionist, they ask you what's it all about. You can smile and tell them this story, thus ensuring the survival of the world's oldest profession, prostitution! I was going to say storytelling. Oh, come on. I think the third one is second.
That's Tom's final, that's his last performance. That's the last thing he ever did. That was from our 2010 One Act Festival, which he insisted that year. He was either in every scene or he was directing it. He insisted on being a part of each scene. Usually you would just have one, and my friend Aaron had written that piece and sent it to me, and I sent it to Tom. I was like, hey, what do you think of this? And basically he was like, you, me, we're doing this. I'm like, okay, that's, sure, of course. At that point, I already knew he was sick. He had told me earlier, so I had a you cannot say no to Tom policy. If he wanted to do something, if he wanted to go somewhere, whatever it was, I was doing it. So obviously, we were gonna do this performance and have like a Waiting for Godot feel to it, which he loved. He loved that show, and we did it. So that was his final. That was probably one of even the last times he was at St. John's. Certainly for a Brooklyn One thing. That was his last Brooklyn One event. We had another event after that in November. We had a jazz concert, and that was the first performance that he didn't show up to, and I didn't know he wasn't coming. I thought he would. We always did the show. It was always him and I. And I remember being on the phone and him telling me, "I can't make it. I don't feel well." And he pretty sure he went into the hospital right after that. So that was the first time he wasn't there. The first Brooklyn One show I had to do by myself. But yeah, that performance is called "Here It Is," and that there's a full length of that on YouTube that you can watch, and it's him and I, basically kind of just being me and Tom. I mean, just kind of goofing off. We barely memorize. You could basically see the script in my pocket. I mean, it wasn't like we weren't. It was a chance for him and I to just be in a show together, be in a scene together.
And they go home. That's it. What if there's nothing for them at home? Then it would be your house. But they can't go to your house. So, ladies and gentlemen, lords and ladies, boys and girls, dogs and cats, lions and tigers, and bears.
Oh my!
Always, every time. Well done. Very good. Now, if you cannot tell, turn off those lights. Because if you cannot tell, my associate, partner, colleague, and I are here to represent you, the audience, for we are all one and the same. You, he, I, she, he, it, and we are all the audience of witnesses for this remarkable event.
So a theater company doesn't just come out of nowhere. What's everybody's involvement? Especially, I know Michael was part of it, Anthony was part of it, obviously. I'm not sure how everybody else played in with the formation and the creation of Brooklyn One.
I remember like 5 minutes ago, Tom Kane drove up to my house. He left Anthony downstairs in the car, came upstairs, sat at my dining room table, and told me all about his dream concept of Brooklyn One. I listened. I tried to understand. I asked a few questions. Tom Kane says, "Are you in?" I'm in. And I've been in ever since.
I mean, so Brooklyn One is not my first theater company. There was one that was that I had started out of college that Tom was involved with. Tom always was wanting his own, theater company. So did I guess. When that one didn't work out, and he and I both stepped away from it, I was kind of done. And him and I, we're chatting, and then this is back when AOL was still popular, right? So AOL, I guess a chat box, pops up, and it's like, hey, and it says, it was like Brooklyn One Theater, and I'm like, who is this? He's like, it's Tom. This is our new company. And I was like, oh man, like, I called him up. I'm like, you crazy? I don't want to. The last one was kind of a mess. I don't know if I want to do this. He's like, we're going to do this. We're going to get the right people involved. It's going to be small. We're going to do, a lot of original stuff. We're going to do a lot of black box style, which is what I prefer anyway. And it's 2006, and I was like, yeah, sure, all right, of course. And that's when we started. We asked, Michael, obviously, who I'm sure Tom had talked to about it as well. Arlene was involved, Arlene Keating. And, then he brought me to St. John's, which I know, Michael, you recounted that story in your interview, how he had spoke to you about it. He brought me there. I hated that space with a passion. I hated it. I saw everything wrong with it. And he was like, just trust me. And I said, all right, I always trusted him. He and I had a way of balancing each other out. It was a balance. And to this day, I miss it. There's an imbalance I still feel to this day, because we fought like brothers. We went head to head creatively all the time. But that's what Brooklyn One was. He's like, let's just do this, you and I, and we'll get the right people together. And we'll do it our way. And I was like, okay, and that's when, we started looking for one acts and things like that. We used to do poetry nights, and we used to have music nights. I mean, we did all these really small, intimate cabaret style things, black box style, in complement to the larger productions that were happening in the area. We were never going to do Guys and Dolls. That was never our thing. We were never going to do Anything Goes. That was never the intention of Brooklyn One. And so, and then Brooklyn One comes from, the One Act Festival, Brooklyn One acts. But then also, if you guys remember, there was a building called One Brooklyn that you would drive by the sign on the Belt Parkway, as you're going by the promenade. And
on the BQE.
On the BQE, yeah, on the BQE by the promenade. And that's where we got the name from. I mean, that's the unromantic version of where Brooklyn One comes from. He was like, if you flip it, it's Brooklyn One. I'm like, all right.
It's hard to compare it to anything, whether it be singing, whether it be dancing. If you want to put on a performance piece,
drama or comedy,
the music, the scenes,
some readings and the
dialogue,
choreography.
Do concerts. It can
One act festivals, an anti-review show, Waiting for Godot,
nonsense.
Shakespeare Festival,
the unique and unusual,
open to the arts,
playwrights, producers, directors, writers, Bay Ridge,
Brooklyn One,
Brooklyn One, Brooklyn One, Brooklyn One,
Brooklyn One,
Brooklyn One, Vince Mazza,
Tom Kane,
Anthony Marino.
The one acts. So I know, Jeff, you directed one or two of the short one acts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did one. Yeah,
I know. I was in that. I was in the one you
was
did.
that the one with the reporter?
Yeah. I was in that.
What was the name of that?
I don't know.
That was something quintet, something. I forget the name of it. That was like a sort of a 9/11 piece, if I remember correctly. It was very good.
No, Jeff did that. The Miraculous Day Quartet.
That's it. The Miraculous Day Quartet.
Right,
Thank
that
you.
was a different one, though.
Isn't that the one?
That was we had music in that one.
Right. Now I can.
And then
Jeff
did one with Steve Ryan and Linda Browning.
Oh yes. I'm sorry. Oh, God, yeah. Okay, yeah, right. I forget the name of that.
With
the video
camera.
Yes. That was great. With Chris Short played the devil, and
I could probably find the name of that. I have all the programs. Yeah. No.
I forgot that name.
I forgot that one too. Jeez.
Danny and I were in the first ever. I believe it was the first ever Brooklyn one act at the comedy club.
Comedy Club, yeah, that was the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Danny and I were in. Danny and Matt Hunt and myself were in the one that Joe Appel directed with Linda Browning. And like I've tried to be involved in those one acts. I love them. You know, I mean, and that so much to me is the feel of what Tom wanted out of Brooklyn One. I mean, and obviously you can speak to that for certain, and Michael as well. But from my understanding of it, the way he always spoke about it was like that was what it was about. It was like encouraging young writers and performers to get out there and do.
With Tom Kane, we were tending bar for a fundraiser / memorial for Vince Mazza, who had just passed away. This was the summer of 2006. So I'm at the bar with Tommy, and we're giving out beer. We're not giving out, we're selling beer. And in between our pints, Tom said, you know, we're doing this one act thing. We're going to take some of Vince's plays that he wrote, and we're going to put on some one acts, and would you be interested in doing it? And since we had had a few pints, I said, sure.
That's what he wanted. He wanted you to express yourself and give you a place to do it.
I completely agree. That was always the intention. The intention was to bring, you know, people from all different groups together. And, you know, we used to do it where like a different, like NCT would direct a one act and sort of bring it to the festival. Like things that, you know, that eventually we kind of streamlined as it got like more popular and things like that. Like we changed it a little bit, but it was always about giving people an opportunity. Like if you were a singer or something in one group and you never acted before, come to Brooklyn One and come act. If you were an actor and maybe you wanted to try to sing, come to Brooklyn. Like it was always about challenging. If you had never directed before, come direct with us. Like it was always about being a safer space, a little bit more like experimental, a little bit more avant-garde, a little bit more stuff that Bay Ridge and you know, South Brooklyn in general, like had not seen before, or like didn't know like things existed, like you know, local playwrights, you know, that who knew, like we were about that life sort of. That was and hope and still, you know, I hope that.
Hey, listen.
Yeah, I mean, you totally made a very creative space in all around, you know, because I had been working only for like Narrows, for example, and then coming to work for you guys on the few occasions that I was able to. It was just so nice, so creative, and so just everybody was encouraged to contribute, and it was okay that everybody contributed. You know, not to the fact where it was disturbing to the director or anything like that, but it was. I'll just keep saying creative. It was a very creative space, and so much what I love.
Exactly. That has always been the intention of Brooklyn One to facilitate that kind of, you know, atmosphere.
It was intimate. It was intimate too. I loved. I know you said that you kind of clashed a little bit about the space. I adored that space. It was so different, and when you were in there, I always wanted to do Godspell in that space.
So did we.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I actually told Tommy, I said, I might come out of retirement for that if you do that one, because that was just, I think that would have been brilliant. But
you know,
I just thought that space was so intimate.
Yes. And, you know, 2006, I was an obnoxious, you know, 23-year-old with a theater degree. You know, what did I, you know, you know, these aren't my stand, you know, what, you know, I want, you know, where's the proscenium? Where are the lights? But what I did learn, and with Tom, is like sort of like what I call like guerrilla warfare theater. Like I now know how to do theater with like, you know, a desk lamp and, you know, no costumes. Like it's like that's.
And a roll of dope. You're good.
And I couldn't be happier about that. Like that's because that's the kind of theater I like anyway now, you know. So by necessity, you know, we turn that place into a home for sure. That. You know, I'm so, you know, thank you for thinking that. And all those things that I thought were negative, I made into positives, and we made into positives. And it became a beautiful home for us, for, you know, for John, for the Rhapsody players. You know, it was something that.
We rehearsed producers there as well.
Yes, I know, because we were rehearsing, Brooklyn One had a show going on at the same time that we were doing in the city. Classic. And we had to rehearse in the basement while you guys were rehearsing upstairs. It was so funny. And we would like always check in, be like, how are you guys doing? In fact, no, we did the show at St. John's, and then we brought it into the city. So actually, we were rehearsing downstairs for a show we had to do upstairs while you guys rehearsed. It was, but that's it's the joy of it all, right? It's the mania.
So with the simplicity of it and everything that all the shows that you guys were doing, what was Tom's reaction, or what was your guys' reaction when I think we have 4 members of the crew here decided that they wanted to mount Nonsense? Amen.
Oh well, Nonsense was a logical choice. It's a small show. It breaks the fourth wall. We had Michael Coluccio in our back pocket to do it, and he had done a fantastic job with that show in the past.
With Anne Marie.
The Brooklyn One twist to Nonsense was saying, let's do Nonsense, Amen. That's the Brooklyn One twist. Why do Nonsense when you could do Nonsense, Amen? And that was a natural...
Which is a legitimate show.
It is, yes.
It's a whole different script. It's not like we just threw men in there.
Yeah.
Dan Goggin rewrote it for that purpose.
And so it was a natural fit to tiptoe into, if Brooklyn One did a musical, what would it look like? And so
Men in Drag.
Right, Men in Drag, yeah. And that was a great show. That was so much fun. Oh man.
It was fun because it was in the space too, so it lent itself to some authenticity.
Yes.
So what were some of your guys' memories of working on that? Was Tom basically just hands off behind the scenes, or was he just
around?
He was around, yeah. He was there, he would be there to to support us and to have some laughs and stuff, yeah.
I actually was pushing for him to be Sister Leo, which was the ballet dancing nun, which would have been in and of itself hysterical.
Oh my God!
But I thought just the sight of that would have been very funny, and the fact that she couldn't dance, and he's like, I can't dance. I said, but she can't. That's the beauty of it. But he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it.
I remember, and Michael, you kind of referenced this in your episode you did with Eric. I remember auditioning for Sister Amnesia, going in there, and the audition being improv for 5 minutes or whatever it was. Literally it was like, go, talk to me for 3 minutes or whatever it is. And I remember there's a detail you left out in your version of the story when you were like, John was so nervous. Yes, I was very nervous. And it was the only time I've ever went into an auditioned, left, got a phone call that said, that sucked. Come back and try it again tomorrow. And so I went back the next day and then got the part, which I think says a lot about you, that you weren't just going to give it. You knew that I could do it, but you weren't just going to hand it to me.
No, I wanted you to I knew you could do it. And I wanted you to get it knowing that you would do it. In other words, I wanted you to leave the audition with a sense of confidence.
Right.
That,
which I did.
You know what?
Yeah.
Like if you left that first audition, it was not great. It was rough. And if I gave you the role based on that, it would not have improved.
Right.
So I wanted you to see that you could do it and that you can improve. And you did your homework.
Nonsense, amen. And I just want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank TK and Anthony and Brooklyn One for hosting us here. We actually put this show together in about 3 weeks. We had a longer than I wanted to audition process, first for a musical director and then for the cast. But in hindsight, I am very glad that I waited as long as I did, because we got what I consider to be the best. And I'd like to introduce this cast. First of all, Mr. Josh Fader. Anthony Michael Stokes. You might know his character, Mr. John Heffernan. Mr. Anthony Marino. And Mr. John Heffernan. I encourage you to put your name on our mailing list or go to our website, brooklyn1.org. Is that right? Yeah. brooklyn1.org, and sign up and join us for our next production, whatever it will be, whenever it will be, it'll be soon. And thank you, and Mr. TK, would you like to say anything?
No, but thank you very much for coming. Wonderful audience. He's not yet. I know you. No, what I really want to do, I want to thank Michael again. If you come back up. Michael, last time directed the show and worked for quite some time. It was our pleasure to have our first musical. So on behalf of Brooklyn One, he is part of Brooklyn One Theater. Thank you so much for making your return.
I would like to give a mention because I know he wants to talk. I feel like John Heffernan is a great example of someone who was in one of our first one-act festivals and stuff, and got tortured by some of my directing and acting techniques and stuff. And then obviously you're muted, John. By the way, I don't know if you know that, we can't hear you. But then played Mother Superior to just absolutely hysterical results.
You're good.
There he is. Did you hear any of that? He's like, what?
No, I heard the whole thing. And Anthony, I gotta tell you, that was a great experience. I remember what you're talking about. I got stuck with something, and Anthony picked up a bunch of magazines, and he threw them on the floor. And he said, say your lines while you're picking up these magazines. And it just totally freed me up, Anthony. It was great. But going to Nonsense Amen, the idea of working with Panapinto after seeing his comedic turn with Jeff, I couldn't wait to see it. And then when he pulls out the puppet, I mean, John with a puppet is, quite a show just by itself. But being Mother Superior,
22.
it was a lot. We had a lot of laughs. I recently watched that, John, and it holds up. It holds up.
It holds up.
It holds up. And of course, remembering Michael's beats. Remember, Anthony? The way Michael
French
directs.
beats.
Yeah, Michael directs with
They
beats.
work.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And we just had a lot of fun. But Anthony, I wanted to comment on the one thing that you said about Brooklyn One. It was a safe haven for artists, but the material was not necessarily safe.
No.
We wanted to do things that other theater companies wouldn't consider. I mean, like doing the black box, not big productions. Like you said, avant-garde pieces written by Tommy. I mean, I did about 9 of your festivals. We did several of Tommy's plays. And what was the name of that play, Anthony? Butterflies was in there.
Carnivorous Butterflies.
Right, I played the detective, and that was a Tom Kane original, wasn't it? Or was that a
that was one. Carnivorous Butterflies, Ignis Fatuus, because he loved his Latin in his shows. That was something that he was writing for many years. Many people had a turn in that show. In an incarnation, you might have just read it around the table. Maybe you did it as a reading for one of our smaller nights. I eventually kind of finished it for him, and we did it. I think that maybe the year after he passed, I did another version of it. But I forget which one. That was he had projects that he would write something. It'd be like 2 pages long. He'd call me. We're doing a reading to I got these people. You got to come down. We're doing a reading. And that was the great thing about having a space, having the company. You just kind of call people down, and they would come, and we'd read maybe 2-3 pages of something, and maybe work on it, get some feedback, and then maybe a year later we wouldn't revisit it. He'd maybe write something else in the interim, come back. So it was a great place for him to hone his skills as a playwright, because he was a playwright. He loved writing his plays from the Life and Times of Matthew Ryan back in 92, 93 to every little small one act. I have pieces of his that are incomplete that we were just kind of working on. It was like, let's have a reading tonight. Okay, let's have a reading. That'd be great. Who do you want to call up? We'll get these people. All right, we'll get these people. And some of them saw the light of day, some of them didn't, but he loved that.
Yeah, that's why he was so intrigued by Vince Mazda.
Right.
The legends of Vince. He and Vince did not know each other.
Nope.
But he heard about the body of work that Vince produced, and I told him about it. When he started talking, it was almost like a perfect storm. Vince gives me all of this material. Tommy is talking about wanting to produce material of unproduced playwrights that are local to Brooklyn. So Vince gives me the stuff. Vince then passes away, not weeks before Tommy and Anthony were opening the first festival.
Right.
And so Vince wasn't there. He didn't see it. He wasn't a part of it. But the first piece we did, well, there were a couple of pieces that night, but it wasn't at St. John's. It was at the
Ray's Comedy Club.
Right. And I think that's when Danny Velez, I think that's when I first met you in person. Because you were there.
A Playwright Grows in Brooklyn, I think it was called.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. That's what they called it. And one of Vince's pieces, one of his little scenes, was the Leo of the Laundromat, which I referenced in my interview last week or 2 weeks ago.
I see Jeff's face
Jeff
right
did
now.
I remember Jeff in that part.
Yeah, of course.
I remember
Yeah.
doing that.
It was great.
Yeah, it was.
Fun story. I did Annie last year as FDR, and I had such trouble memorizing. And you know, I actually went on with a White House folder with my script inside. Well, I did the same thing in Leo of the Laundromat. I had a script in the basket in the laundry bag because I couldn't remember 2 pages of lines, which brings me to my point is, again, I'm sorry to bring up producers, but that script, as you know, was humongous. And for him to memorize all that, being sick, was just a marvel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That same evening, wasn't Danny, weren't you in one of those shorts with Fred Greco where you came behind him and you put the gun to him and you said, stick him up, and he went, I don't think so. He was sitting on a park bench. Danny, do you remember that? That was you, right? Wasn't it you who did that?
So I don't remember.
Later.
I don't remember the name of the play. I'm sorry, Anthony.
No. I was thinking. I don't know if that was that night or was that later? Was there?
I think that might. If it wasn't at Ray Garvey's comedy club, because he was another great friend of Tom Kane's who passed away as well.
Yeah.
It might have been one of the first ones we did at St. John's.
Yeah,
but
it might have been. That might have been.
Because Fred was obviously Fred. And, you know,
I feel like
I remember
there were photos of that.
I remember that. The one that Danny and I were in at the comedy club was about like he played a son who went home and got drunk and then came back.
Yeah, it's dramatic.
Like, I remember that. And they were rehearsing it at OLG, and Matt and I happened to just be standing there, and they were like, "Hey, we need 2 guys to walk across as party goers," and we were like, "Okay." And so we ended up in it. And I have to tell you, I have not turned down a Brooklyn One project. I don't think ever. I mean, like, and that goes into even past TK's. You know, I mean, his presence is always there, but his physical presence being there, because I just love the way that it's just a creative space. The pressure is just there is no pressure. There's no pressure to be something that someone's been before. It's even when we did Godspell last year, which TK's presence was all over Godspell. I mean, but last year it was, you know, there was no pressure for anybody to be or do anything specific. It was go in there and feel it, you know?
I wanted to add to that just because it's weird. Anthony mentioned before, you know, getting out of college, you kind of have this sort of different mindset. You think you're going to change everything, right? And one thing about the theater company that you and TK came up with was that it grounded you, it challenged you, and it rejuvenated you. So it was definitely a place that, like, those one acts, it was just that it was something that you had to come up with something, you know, new.
They were tough. They were really tough. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really, you know, in hindsight is 2020. It's like you think about it, it's like, wow, you know, I really missed those moments the most. It's been a while since I performed, and those were the moments where you really were able to do some great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for doing that.
Listen, those one act festivals would still be going on, you know, if we you know had the space to do it and stuff. I mean, that would, the only reason, you know, Brooklyn One has had to change the way that it's had to change is because of a loss of space, which, you know, we can all talk about. We know that's you know, something that's rough we have to contend with. But no, those one acts were certainly the signature piece. That was the signature thing of Brooklyn One. Like, no matter what we would do, poetry nights, music night, whatever crazy things we came up with throughout the year, Hooray Renee's, fundraisers, we always came back to, there's going to be a one act festival. Like, that was always, we always came back to, there's going to be a one act festival. It's going to be in the fall, and that's always going to be our thing. Like, always.
Well, you still have them going right now. I mean, it's great that even during quarantine. I mean, listen, I know Zoom isn't the best, but I mean, you still got these one acts going right now during quarantine.
Yeah, I think you know, oddly, this whole quarantine thing has inspired me creatively. I don't know, but I've been able to connect with people that I haven't in a while, and see some new scripts go up, and playwrights that we've worked with, and yeah, I mean, why not? You don't have to worry about the venue, right? So in lieu of and production value is okay. So you know, trying to take advantage of that the best we can, and still be a presence for sure. Yeah.
I would like to play off of that a little bit, because Tom's his presence is felt very much throughout everything that you guys are doing. Even now, it's just the creative, you know. And he was a big figure in the community, literally and figuratively. And I'll share a story about him, about me, how I realized that he was a big feature in the community. And then I want to ask you guys about something as we sort of wind down here. I want to try to make sure we hit on everything. I remember after Producers, and for those of you who kind of know me, you know that, like, I'm really confident to perform on stage when I'm in a character. I'm very against performing off stage, out of character. If it's just me standing there singing, I pretty much can't do it. And Tom said to me when I guess I had to have been 20, maybe 21. He said, my mother loved you so much in the Producers that she would like you to come and perform at her birthday party. I don't remember what your birthday was. It was a landmark birthday. If anybody remembers, it might have been 80 or 70. I don't know.
Something more like that. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I think it was 70, maybe. Yeah.
70.
And she was like, she wants you to come sing at her birthday party. She wants you to sing Old Bavaria from the Producers and sing Haben Sie gehört, das Deutsche Band, which is in an accent and is a dance and is so far beyond anything I would have ever said yes to, because it's not because I wouldn't want to, because it would have made me so nervous, but because it was Tom, and he was like, this would really make her day. I'm not going to tell her that you're doing it, and it's going to be a surprise. And I was like, I guess, okay. I was 21. I was like, I'm really nervous. And so we showed up to his mother's birthday party, and it was all of his mother's friends. And he brought me in, and he was like, here he is. And as a young performer, having just really started college, his mother was so appreciative, lost her mind that I was there. And I mean, I did it. I stood in her living room and I performed those two songs. They went wild for it. And I was like, wow, that was really something. I stayed for the whole party. We hung around. I ate. It was great. Then the next week, it was in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And like, I know that he had a hand in that because he worked for the paper, right?
Citizen Kane.
The fact that it was in the papers in Bay Ridge that I performed at his mother's birthday party, I was like, this guy definitely is an important guy. It is true that he is important in the community. And that really stood out to me. And then years later, they ended up naming a street after him in Bay Ridge, right?
89, yeah.
So tell me, whoever knows, how a little bit of the story of how that came to be, how Tom Kane Way became a thing, and was it difficult, or what? You know, what has to go into it? It was certainly deserved, right? But
So
it was a pretty easy process. I mean, Anthony, if you want to take it,
I got to be honest with you. I had no direct involvement in that. I'm not sure who did.
It was more Kerry. It was more Kerry and Kim, that they got in touch with Gentili,
right?
Yep.
And Vinnie Gentili at the time, and it was a process. It was still a political process, but it was made that much quicker and expedient because of who it was for.
That's his child. That block was his childhood block. That's where they grew up. And so that's, because there was some talk about, I do remember talking about the location. There was some talk about 99th Street in front of Hamilton Parkway, obviously where Brooklyn 1 was. There was also talk about by Severian, by McKay Place over there. There were a couple of different locations, because again, there were so many different locations that people know Tom from, but it seemed right that 89th and
one of the things that apparently has to happen when you have a street named after you is you have to get the permission of all of the neighbors on that block.
Yes.
To sign a petition or something like that. So while we wanted to get 99th Street, where St. John's is, Tom was not necessarily connected to that particular street as much as he was where it ended up being, where nobody objected to signing a petition.
Right. Yeah. But that's something you have to apply. The community board, now I know, because the community board gets involved and things like that. Like, that was, what was that, like a year? It was 20. What year was that, Anne-Marie? 2014. Yeah, I was probably still in heavy denial at that point. So,
it was a great ceremony, though, I have to say.
It was a very
emotional thing, for sure.
And Vinnie Gentili carried the ball to get that done. It was, and Michael's correct, it was initialized by Kerry and Kim, but Vinnie Gentili knew Tommy, and as you said, John, earlier in the conversation, he put him up in the middle of the shop.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna count down. 3, 2, 1, and away we go.
Colleen O'Donnell sang the Star Spangled Banner, and Connor Mayrose sang Smile.
Which is always special. When Connor sings Smile is always my favorite.
Well, it was just so powerful that I felt I had to bring him into the shows at St. Pat's with Rhapsody, because like I was standing next to guys that I know all my life, and we had tears in our eyes the way that boy sang. And I said, I'm going to bring him into Rhapsody just for the St. Pat's shows and let him do his thing. But to have him there singing, that's perfect TK. Think about it. It's perfect TK, because TK was best friends with his grandparents, great friends with Eddie Mayrose, right?
Oh, yeah.
We all had columns. We all had columns in the Brooklyn Eagle. Eddie Mayrose wrote A View from the Cheap Seats. Tommy was Citizen Kane, and I was Hef's Corner. And we all did a weekly article in the paper. And, typical Tommy. Tommy saw the talent in a young person like Connor. Tommy would have been showcasing Connor. So I just felt that there was a correlation to bring Connor into our shows, because it brings TK there as well, And also, one thing I wanted to add, there are photos of the last night of that Tommy performed, that night, Anthony, when you came out, the both of you, in that one act. I have photographs, and I don't know if you believe in this kind of stuff, but there are giant orbs all around. I'm wrong. A year later, the next one, there were giant orbs around Anthony, the piano, the front where Tommy would make his announcements. It almost looks like, in the Honeymooners where you see the picture of the moon, The orbs were that large. Now, I'm not, I don't want to get into, that kind of stuff now on this conversation, but Tommy is in the room, and he's with us right now. And I really believe that, and Anthony trudging forward in grief and keeping that company together, it was amazing, because you moved forward, Anthony, and we were with you, but you were the guy,
Well, I mean, moving forward was something that, I wasn't going to stop doing Brooklyn One, but it was like, now what? And, but his influence is still, I still say, what would, like I said, Tommy, what do you want to do? I'll have conversations with him. I don't care. This is, but the last time I saw him, we spoke, and he was in the hospital, and he was, and he looked at me. He's like, it's yours now. We didn't have that conversation. The denial that I was in when he was sick, I really can't express to you. I did not think he was going to pass. Stage 4, metastasized, none of those words meant anything to me. It was like, no, he just needs some rest. He'll be fine. So I can't express to you my grief that continues, but it was after everything, and it was like the dust settled, where, I found myself sitting at St. John's, like, by myself.
Yeah.
In like that empty room, being like screaming at him. Like,
right.
It's just one of those things. And it's like, I wasn't going to stop, but he was very specific. He was like, it's yours now. You've got to keep going. And that was the only time we spoke. I knew he was sick. We never talked about what to do with Brooklyn One after he passed, because we never really talked. I wouldn't let him have that conversation with me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was we're not talking about this. He would sit. I remember conversations where he would talk about his life and things, and I almost didn't want to hear it, because I couldn't process it. So yeah, that's why, I had to go on, and how would I go on, but I'm glad we do. And it's still as much sort of his company as it is mine. And I think he'd be pleased with the direction that we continue to go in. But it's all still from him. Like, I still refer to myself, I am the co-founder of Brooklyn One. Of
course.
It's never, he's always going to be a driving force, like, always.
And he was all over Godspell, as John said.
Well,
all over Godspell.
Godspell in a church was his idea. We just were supposed to do it at St. John's.
Right. I know that.
When the opportunity came, I literally was like, well, you get your Godspell.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, and it's going to seem like we're going in a negative, in a down, but it's a down and up, because I'm going to steal Eric's question. So I wanted to ask you guys in these last kind of 10 minutes that we have, what are some of your last memories you have of Tom? And then I promise you we're going to end on a positive note. But I wanted to just see, what were some of your last interactions like?
Actually, before the people that have more history than I go, it's really funny, because I met Tom, I spoke with Tom, we got to know each other, and I knew he was a community guy. And at the time, I have the email actually here from November 8th, 2010. I was working with a company that just moved into the Bay Ridge area. And I messaged him because we wanted to do something called Letters to Santa as a fundraiser, where kids come and they take picture with Santa Claus, cookies and milk, coffee for the family, and things like that. And we wanted him to play Santa Claus. And he responded to me literally the next day that he was actually in the hospital since November 9th, and that he just got out. He's feeling a lot better. The project sounds great. They did something like that in 2007. It was a big hit. And to call him with follow-up, and I never got to call him, and I never got to follow up with that, and because he got sick again. And it's just the community guy that he was, and that no matter what, you meet him once, you meet him twice, you're a friend, and,
Yeah.
and you're someone to turn to.
He absolutely was. Yeah.
I left my job in 2010 after almost 10 years, and was seriously not. It was just not a good moment for me. And Tom was working at the Brooklyn Eagle, and he got me in there. You know, I only worked there for about 6 months, and it was a stupid ass job that I hated, but loved that he brought me in and really, you know, got me this job. And yeah, that's my last with Tom.
I remember seeing you down there at the Eagle, you know, when you were working there. Two things. One, there's a photo on Facebook of Anthony, Tommy, and myself. We're wearing white tuxedo jackets. You could see that Tom was going through a lot of treatments. It might have been a late summer, maybe an early September Rhapsody show. You know, at St. John's, we did, you know, 10, 12 performances a year there. And then I think of the hospice, and I think of the peacefulness that was surrounding him as he laid there. And we didn't say much. You know, I went with Kevin Sweeney, and I think I needed support to go. I really, you know, you guys wouldn't think that of me, and you know, guys make a lot of jokes, you know, about me and stuff, but I had a tough time going, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to say goodbye. Whereas in some ways, I think I would have escaped and like just hid, you know, like, and you know, it's just like you don't want to face it, like Anthony was saying. But I went with Kevin, and Kieran too. Kieran was there as well, and we spoke with him, and you know, just whispers, and he was on his way to heaven. And I just remember that peacefulness that was surrounding his bed, and you know, he was a beautiful, beautiful person. And you know, to be spoken of like this many years after his death is a testament to who he was. And I'll never forget him. That's mine.
My last recollection of TK was in the hospital room 2 days before he passed. And he had to put together the video tribute. And I worked as fast as I possibly could so that he could get to see it. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. And it was finally played at his wake. And
It's beautiful.
just wish he had seen it, because there was so much on it. And you'll see it when this plays back.
What about the wake? What about the wake itself?
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. There were
Lines around the block. Lines around the block.
Yeah. I was there. I was there every. I think it was every session. Or I took off of school the whole 3 days. I was in college at the time for the wake and the funeral, and it was. I've never seen as many people turn out for something like that in my whole life. Still haven't.
Yes, and the funeral as well. His friends were there. Again, he had another set of friends that were 5, 6 years older than us. The Vacantes and all these guys that worked on the floor with him in the 80s that also went to St. Patrick's, but graduated like in 72, you know? So we had another set of friends. I know, because we saw them all of us came together at the wake and the funeral. You saw the theater people, you know, us, and then you saw the people who are his sports knuckleheads, all the children that he coached, who are now grown men with families, and then you saw his contemporaries. So it was something. I was in the choir loft, and at the end, somebody said, you know, we have to belt out Mac the Knife, you know? And so I'm waiting, and the organist is looking at me, and everyone's walking out, and we just belted it out, and the whole church sang Mac the Knife on the way out of the way of St. Pat's. I don't think St. Pat's can say that for many funerals, that the Bobby Darin Threepenny Opera classic was sung as the recessional.
Well, I'm thinking to what I said last week or 2 weeks ago. Some very fond memories, obviously, would be The Odd Couple, which he insisted on doing with me. Doing it at 9/11, at the time of 9/11, and him pushing that we try to bring laughter to the people, even though we didn't know if it was a good idea, and we're glad we did. My last trip to Boston, where he was so sick that we had tickets for a doubleheader and we had to miss one game. The Wake.
Yeah.
Jeff's video. Everyone was giving material as quickly as we could to make the video. And as Jeff said, as I said in my thing too, he didn't live to see that. He wanted to, but he was happy that he knew we were doing it. That I can tell you. And then we played it at the video on a loop, and a lot of people saw a lot of great footage. And also, I want to mention at the funeral, I don't think I've ever heard a greater homily than Father Gerald's homily that morning about Tom. He was my best friend.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Emery?
This is bringing up a lot. I remember when he first got diagnosed, he called me on the phone, and it was one of those situations like, do you remember where you were when, the towers fell, or, when people say, oh, when JFK was shot and stuff like that. I remember where I was standing when Tommy called me to tell me he had cancer. He was scared, but he was determined. I was ironing, and I don't iron often, and it's one of those bizarre things that you associate with. They shouldn't belong together, but I associate my ironing board with that phone call. And then I fast forward to, he had a very nice relationship with my husband, John Paul. They had a group of friends, Rob Fawn, Freddie, JP, and Tommy. They called themselves Otto's Outcasts, and they used to go to Peter Luger's. And there was like a 90-year-old waiter named Otto who was a character, and they would call themselves. And so my husband also was very close to TK. And towards the end, we happened to, my husband had a really great conversation with him towards the end. And he opened up to a lot. He was very, very concerned about telling his mother when he knew that it was going to be hospice. That was a very, very big thing for him. And, I'm glad that my husband was there to kind of have that moment with him. But JP and I also were there on that day that Jeff and Karen and JP and I were there. And we shared a really beautiful moment with him. Do you remember this, Jeff? That I don't know what we said. We made some kind of a joke, and I think it was at your expense.
Of course.
And he left. And I remember that was a very big deal because he was almost unresponsive. I mean, he was not able to really communicate. And whatever we said, it got him to laugh. And I remember being told later on that was one of the last times that he kind of expressed that. And then, so I just felt very grateful to be in that. And I'm very grateful that he had Camille as a friend. I know she couldn't connect onto this call, but she was such a force. She was so connected to Padre Pio, where they had such a beautiful relationship, and she was there for so many. I think the reason why he was at peace was very much tied to these kind of friendships that he had, and and his newfound friendship with Camille. I remember the wake and funeral. I remember going to the diner, Michael, afterwards, when we had the diner, that diner that no longer exists. We had those moments.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't exist?
No, it's still, the structure is still there, but when we look at it, that's what we think of that. But he there was such a beauty to him. There was such a beauty to the fact that we can all kind of connect, whether you knew him for 5 minutes or whether you knew him for your whole life. It all came together in that week, in the funeral. Like John was saying, it brought together so many walks of life. You look around and that's again, the great connector. And it was all genuine. There was nobody that walked through that wall, that the doors that just said, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm supposed to do this. Everybody wanted to be there. Everybody wanted to get another, feeling of his energy in their lives. That's how I felt. And when everybody clapped at his funeral when they were playing Mac the Night. I mean, it was surreal to be at that funeral.
I remember that. I remember them saying that, most funerals are sad and depressing, but for Tom, there was just another curtain call. And I remember that the applause.
He wanted to be a party.
Yeah, it was really something.
He got one.
Yeah.
He did.
Well, I went to see him in the hospital, and it was dark. The room was dark. and I walked in, and I think his mom and dad were there, and I introduced myself. But they remembered me because we did Anything Goes, like in '96. So it was dark. I never forget. And I walked in. He was laying there. His eyes were closed. He was just laying there. And I went over, put my hand on his hand, and I said, "Hey, buddy, it's John Tamaro." And I continued to talk, and he cut me off with, "How's your son?" And in that moment, I'm like, he's laying here. He's, in the situation he's in. And when he heard it was me, he asked me how my son was. My son was like, I think 5 or 6 at the time. And I said, he's great, getting big. He said, thanks for coming. And then he just turned his head and just like continued to just be restful. And I left. And I was like, look at that.
It's interesting. I as you guys were speaking, I looked at a couple of the last messages that Tom and I shared, and he was very important to me. I was when I met him, I was very confused. I didn't really know much about my own identity, and I had a lot of struggles with that. And he was always there to lend a hand. And it's interesting, I pulled up a message. The last message that he did send me was, "Let's do lunch." And he had said to me, he was like, apparently there was a rehearsal of some sort. And he's like, "I'm sorry that, I couldn't stay to talk. But, we will someday." And I'm happy because even though physically we did not meet again, with you guys, it definitely feels like he's here.
Yeah.
And there was a message here that, when you look at things that you've written, I wrote this May of 2010, and I said, I guess this was after we heard what was going on with him. I said, "Hey, Tom, I hope you're doing okay. I miss you, buddy." I asked for his phone number for some reason. I said, maybe if you feel up to it, we could go see another game. I'll drive. And I said, "I love you, TK. You're the greatest man I know." And that tells you, how I feel. The greatest.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I remember the last thing was in between. He had gone into the hospital and then came out and then went back. And I believe it was in the middle time there. Last time I saw him, Matt Hunt and I went out to dinner with TK to Pippin's. I had never been there. And so he took me there, and I learned 2 lessons that night. One, that to be like him, and that if you respect everyone else, they'll respect you. He said to me, "You come with me anywhere we go here in Bay Ridge, you're not going to pay for a meal. Easy." And I said, and I knew it was because he was just respected. And I think that was, that was something that stood out to me. That, and he said to me, try everything once. He said, there's a lot of things I've tried once that I can tell you, skip it. But he, was like, that's the way you have to live. And it was weird that he randomly started giving me advice. Like we didn't have that kind of relationship. Like we were just friends, but I remember him telling us that everything is worth trying because you never know what's going to stick with you, and you never know what's going to matter to you in the long run. And then I remember Danny and I wanted to go visit him in the hospital. And we didn't want to just barge in because we were, again, very young. So we called, and I believe it was, I think it was his wife, might've been his wife or his mother, said to me, he's not present. And I know for a fact he doesn't want you to see him. He doesn't want you guys to see him this way. So we didn't go. And I think it had to have been 10 hours later, she called me personally and said, you know, I know you guys loved him, and I know that you wanted to come see him, and I think he knew that. And she called me to tell me that he had passed. And I remember that meaning a lot to me, that these 20-year-old guys, you know, she felt that it was important to call us and tell us personally. Because, I mean, she knew, I think, how much he meant to us, and you know, we didn't get to be there with him. But, you know, he stays with us, and I think.
I woke up, I thought that I was in a dream. Is anything really the way it seems? There's a lesson to be learned. I've learned it very well, and I'm here to say there's a place we can go just to get away from everything, where we can be just who we are, and it's got everything that we'll ever need. So take a little time, there are sand dunes to climb. You won't believe your eyes at the house with the gorgeous view of the Carolina sunrise. Took a swim, the ocean was extremely packed. Had a drink, that's when I got bushwhacked.
That's when I got bushwhacked.
But there's one thing that I know, that we are family. It was meant to be.
There's a place we can go just to get away from everything, where we can be just who we are, and it's got everything that we'll ever need.
So take a little time, there are sand dunes to climb. You won't believe your eyes at the house with the gorgeous view of the Carolina sunrise. It was meant to be. There's a place we can go just to get away from everything, where we can be just who we are, and it's got everything that we'll ever need. So take a little time, there are sand dunes to climb. You won't believe your eyes at the house with the gorgeous view of the Carolina sunrise. The Carolina sunrise.
Carolina sun,
The Carolina sunrise.
Carolina sun,
The Carolina sunrise.
Carolina sun. Don't sleep in the subway, darling.
a new direction, a different view, a new feeling, a new idea. Let's make it count for me and you. A new morning to jump right in, to right or wrong, to meet a friend. A new morning, that's what we've got. I hope it's good and never ends. A new morning is here for, morning is here for us. Here I am again. I wipe the sleep out of my eyes. Here I sit again. Alarm clock tells me when to rise.
Here I think again. I wonder what this day will bring. Here I go again. It's really good to be the king.
I love this time of day. The slate's been cleaned, it's up to me. A new one on the way, and that's the way it's meant to be. A new morning is what this is. A new beginning, a different day. A new morning, that's what we've got. A perfect place to start the day. A new morning to jump right in, to right or wrong, to meet a friend. A new morning is what we've got. I hope it's good and never ends. I get another shot to do the things I need to do. I pray to God a lot to give me strength to see it through.
I've got to try my best and give it all I've got to give, 'cause that's the only way that we should live.
If we see it through in all we do and all we say, we can make it through. Yes, make it through another day. A new morning is what this is. A new direction, a different view, a new feeling, a new idea. Let's make it count for me and you. A new morning to jump right in, to right or wrong, to meet a friend. A new morning, that's what we've got. I hope it's good and never ends. A new morning is here for, morning is here for us.
How do you keep his memory alive? What does his memory mean to you? And how do you take it forward? I'll actually just start so I can just kind of let you guys go. You guys know that I started doing radio and podcasting and stuff like that later in my life. And the first person I ever interviewed was Tom. I asked him when I was doing radio at Brooklyn College. I had just started a show. In my first week, I said, I want to interview Tom. And I called him. He was more than happy to sit down with me. We sat down and we did an interview. The next thing I knew, there was an article in the Brooklyn Eagle about our show and our little show at Brooklyn College. And the article is still posted outside the radio station to this day. In the glass case, still there, the article he wrote about us. And, you know, and I learned how to edit, working on a piece with he and John Heffernan about Dyker Heights versus Bay Ridge. And like, you know, Tom was a very big part of what it is now. And I keep his memory with me in that way, that I know that, man, if I could interview one person on my podcast, it would be him. Like, boy, what stories that would have been. But you know, was a big supporter in everything that I ever did, in the time that we knew each other, and very much in what I do now. And so I carry him with me in that, and I like to keep his memory alive that way. And so, yeah, any of you guys have last closing things you'd like to say? And
I'll piggyback right off that one with, I literally started this concept on a phone call with Danny Mazza, saying, I want to talk about your history in the industry and and why you stopped singing. And it just went into so many memories about Vince and Tom and so many people that, you know, I wasn't fortunate enough to work with, or didn't get a chance to work with, but I knew through so many people. And just even Michael and Anne Marie, Jeff, you know, everyone who's sitting in this room right now, just a chance to really work with any of you guys and just get to know you guys as people. And that's what the Tom Kane legacy was. Yeah, sure, he was the king of Bay Ridge. That's what he was, and that's one of the reasons that it was given that name, is because I don't think there is anybody that you could walk up to and say the name Tom Kane is going to have a bad thing to say about that guy. And he's just a friend to everybody. And I literally knew him for a few weeks, and I just felt a love that community theater is magic. And I think everybody could attest to that. And it brings people together that don't normally get together. And to see a big guy like Tom Kane hugging people and just buddying up to everybody was just a memory. And I wanted to share his legacy with everybody. And I want the world to know about Tom Kane, just because he deserves it.
I think the easy answer for me is to say, of course, Brooklyn One, right? I mean, inherently, I'm going to carry on his legacy with the company, but that's not even, like, I miss my friend. I miss my best friend. Like, there are things that he was supposed to be here for me. My wedding, my first kid, he was supposed to be at these things. Like, I saw him do all these things with like people who were older than me. I saw him officiate weddings. I saw him write songs and for people's weddings. I saw him marry people. I saw him celebrate the birth of children. And there was always that expectation of, like, that's going to be what I get to experience with him now too. And he passed away at a time when he and I, over like from 2005, 2006, you know, we were at odds a little bit, actually, like, you know, for a little while. And, you know, we were reconnecting from 2009 on a little, you know, artistically we were always there. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, personal relationships can ebb and flow. And him and I were like really reconnecting in a way that I was really looking forward to, like, you know, what was next. And I think about that a lot more than, like, Brooklyn One's easy. Like, Brooklyn One that's the heart of it. Like, that's fine. Like, I can always, like, our legacy together, like his legacy to that company is easy. But man, I miss him calling me up being like, I'm outside, let's go grab lunch. I miss him, you know, walking 3rd Avenue with him. I miss going out in Bay Ridge, having drinks and, you know, going to Pippin's and just running into him with friends, and it being like the whole start of a new night. Like, I miss that. And I think what's so comforting is that, like, there are so many people out there that have all of those same types of memories, all those same types, like, they can, like, they have their version of Tom. That's also, like, that's what's important, is that we hold on to that. Like, because he did affect you. If you knew him for 5 minutes, if you knew him for 25 years, it almost, like, it doesn't, you were the most important person in the room to him when you were talking to him. And not because he was trying to, like, act like something, but because you were actually the most important thing in the room to him. And that's just so Tom, and something that we can all hold on to. But I miss my friend. Like, I still talk to, I still talk to him, but I still have conversations with him. You know, I I have every card he ever wrote me. I had the last card he wrote me. And I was supposed to see him the day that he passed. My plan was to go to the hospital and see him. And I got a phone call that afternoon. I was finishing up at work. I was teaching at the time. It was dismissal. And it was Ellen, his wife, that said he passed. And I threw my cell phone across the room, and I ran into like a corner. I just, because the denial part of it was just really heavy for me. And he did a really good job of trying to protect me too. It was like he did a really good job of trying not to give me all the info. He was really trying to protect me, and I was angry at him for a long time about that. Because you want the whole truth from someone, but it wasn't that he was lying to me or trying to keep things from me. He was trying to protect me. He didn't want to say, like, John, he didn't want you to see him like that. Right. He didn't want that. Right. So, but I'm going on too long. I could talk about this all day. We all can, but yeah, I miss him, and I'm thankful that I was able to walk into an audition for XAC when I was 11 years old.
Yeah. I want to just say thank you, everybody, for doing this. Eric, thank you for initiating it. I thought this was a wonderful, wonderful experience to go through everybody's feelings and thoughts about Tommy. And so I'm just going to say goodbye and thank you. And let's all remember Tom.
Yes.
Thank
you, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, Michael, go ahead, buddy.
I was just wanted to say this, two things. Number one, Tom was the most authentic person I ever knew. And when I say authentic, there was absolutely no pretense about him. He was kind, he was non-judgmental, and I think, as John said, he was open to, new experiences, and he had a kind word. I'm looking at all your faces. In my years of knowing, he had a kind word or a funny story about every single one of you. And I know them all. And they're all good. He was not partisan. He was not political. He was friends with Gentili as much as he was with Marty Golden. And he knew how to bridge gaps between people. And he did, as many of you have said, he's looked for the best in everybody, and he found it. And I think that's why there were lines around the block at his funeral, at his wake. I think that's why the church was packed. I think that's why when you walked down 3rd Avenue with him, it took about an hour to get from one block to the next, because he stopped and stopped, or people stopped him. And that's a testament to the fact that people wanted to be in his presence, not just because he was a big guy, not just because he was a loud guy or a popular guy. He was an authentic guy. Yeah. If I have to remember him in any way, it would be that he was the most authentic person I ever knew. I said in my interview, we were very different people when we met. We still are to this day. Very different personalities, different life experiences. He didn't give a shit about any of that. He knew my inner soul, who I was, and I knew his. And we all got to know who he was. But I think the reason he had so many friends and the reason he affected so many lives, if I had to put a bow on it, is because he never had an inauthentic bone in his body.
Agreed.
Danny?
Yeah, I love that you said that. I'm so happy that I followed you up on that, Michael, because I couldn't put it into words what you said, but that's exactly, I think that's what made me attracted to him so much, was the fact that he was non-judgmental. And he was such an intelligent man when it came to just being able to spot if there was something wrong. And I guess the way I would like to continue with his memory is by living in that type of way that you're saying, Michael. I think we need more people in the world who are non-judgmental, who are kind, and I think following that as a model, I think, is really important. And I didn't even know that the play that he wrote, that was just something that he like the second thing he ever wrote.
Oh yeah,
So
no, yeah.
that's really inspiring. Just the fact that he was able to get it done. So I'm eternally grateful that you guys asked me to be a part of this. And yeah, let's just be like Tom.
Marilena?
Yeah, I don't have anything to say other than, yeah, I strive to be as authentic and community gathering, make everybody be friends. Let's all just have fun, be creative, and yeah, that's it.
Anne-Marie?
I think I mentioned in my interview with you, Eric, that I have a morning self-care routine, which is workout, meditation, journaling, and prayer. And in my prayer time, it's a very dedicated prayer time. I have my list of angels that I talk to, and Tommy is one of them. So I talk to him every day, along with Vince, and I'm very blessed on earth and in heaven to have people looking out for me. And so I know he's always looking out for me. When I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, I just knew Tommy and I loved him. I didn't know how lucky I was to know him. I just got lucky for where I grew up and to be surrounded by people like him. But I know now how lucky I was. All those years I was away from theater, he was so determined to get me back into it. And I wish that had happened more. I wish that just the timing had been more serendipitous with that. But I think I will carry with him his enthusiasm and his joy of connecting people, and whether it's theater or not theater, just in, I think Michael said it the best. He was the most authentic person. What you see is what you got. And that's what I want to do for others, what he did for me, which was to make everybody feel like they were the most important thing in the moment and in the room, always. So that's what I take away from him, among so many other things. So thank you for letting me be part of this.
Johnny?
In August, my father will be dead 30 years. And one of the things that he instilled in me was be nice to everybody. Just be nice. Just be nice to everybody. And that's what Tom was about. He was just nice to everybody. And that came back to him 100-fold. And that's what I do in my everyday life. I'm just nice to people. When I meet people who are nice to people, I take something from them and I try to emulate them. So he's one of the people that I was watch and say, wow, he's nice to everybody.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. That's how I think about him. And thank you, Eric, for putting this together, because it was very cathartic to talk about him and just keep him alive and his memory, and it was great. Thanks, man.
Mr. Heffernan.
Okay, I'm off of mute, right?
Yeah, you're off of mute.
Pretty tough to mute John Heffernan. That's I don't know how I did that, but I think it's a sum of what everyone else has said. What is the greatest tribute to a person is to emulate them. And Johnny just said that. Anne-Marie said it. For myself, it's my work at St. Patrick's with the kids, keeping that school alive, coaching in the Little League with my own son as he was growing up, supporting the school now, trying to be a mentor, directing their plays, and continuing to perform and give the money away and do the right thing. Tommy was a do the right thing guy. And I'd like to be more like him. And I miss him. There's so many times you turn a corner, you say, TK would see this. Oh, man, what would he say? And then you hear his voice, Heffernan, screaming at me from across the street like Ralph Cramden. He was loved, and I will never forget him. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for everything. I'm very emotional listening to all my friends speak here. It's just very beautiful.
So before we sign off for the day, I normally do an exercise with my guests where I say, if you can talk to young you, what advice would you give? But unfortunately, the gentleman could not be here. So in our last exercise, real quick, one word How would you sum up Tom Kane in one word? We'll start with Anthony.
In one word.
One word.
I mean, love, man. Him and I.
That's
like, love. That guy. This is a testament. I mean, love. For sure.
I'll take king. Man, he was a king. John Panavento?
Me? Oh. I would say encouraging. Or supportive. He supported literally, Danny and I, especially, man, in the time that we were close with him, man, he was behind us every step of the way, and I know that if he could see the things that I've done now, the things that I'm doing now, I know that he'd be very proud, and I think that so supportive.
Mary Elena?
Community. Community.
Danny?
Inspiring.
Mr. Coluccio?
My first thought was loving. My next would be authentic and real. Real.
Mr. Heffernan?
I agree with Michael and Anthony with the love, so I would say genuine.
Mr. Tamaro?
Everybody took my word. I'll say tremendous.
Yeah, Johnny.
Anne-Marie?
It took my word too, but I'm going to say, because I said joyful before, I'm going to say life. He was full of life, and he infused life into everything that he touched. And so even though he's not here, that can't touch the word life for him.
And on that note, I want to thank everybody for being here today and participating in this. This has been a spectacular roundtable. There you go.
There he is.
That
Thank
sign,
you all.
Coluccio, that sign is in my garage. I have that sign up.
Really?
Yeah.
I found a whole bunch here, Eric. I'm gonna have to send you.
Send
now,
it,
as
send
I'm
everything. So on that note, I want to thank everybody for being here on this first ever episode of Community Roundtable, which is spectacular. I want to first throw out there, thank you, Anthony, Brooklyn One, for keeping everything alive with your play readings. And guys, make sure you check out his one act. John with the podcast, make sure everything's going on. Michael, everybody, Johnny, Anne-Marie, thank you guys, Danny, so much for being here. And just to lighten the spirits before we go, when we sign off, and everyone signs off with their name, please do it in your best Tom Kane voice. We're going to start with, hey, I'm Eric Fitzgerald. Anthony?
Marino!
Panapinto?
John Panapinto.
Mary Elena?
Maria Elena!
Danny?
Andy!
Michael?
Coluccio!
Hef?
Mr. Heffernan!
Johnny?
Hey, Tamaro!
And Anne-Marie Brogan.
Anne-Marie Mafouz Brogan.
Thank you guys again for tuning in. I want to appreciate everybody for sharing your time. Please make sure to just keep it alive and just remember, it's about memory. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you. Love all of these.
Bye, everybody.
Love you guys.
Great.
Once again, I want to thank everybody who tuned into the inaugural episode of Community Roundtable, where we honored the man, the myth, the legend himself, the King of Bay Ridge, Mr. Tom Kane. I want to thank everybody who participated, Mary Elena, Anne-Marie, Michael, John, Jeff, Johnny, Danny, and especially I want to thank my two co-hosts, Mr. John Pud Panapinto of the Nothing Podcast and Coolside Productions, and of course the man himself, Anthony Marino from Brooklyn One Productions. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Share this out there, share it to the world, and make sure to donate to Brooklyn One Productions. because we definitely want to see some more one acts out there. Everybody stay safe.
After drawing out, oh, it's harder to catch. And now McKee spends, he spends just like a sailor. Could it be, do you think that our boy has done something rash? Hey, Jenny Diver, hopes to be charging. Oh, look out, Miss Lottie Lenya, and old Lucy Brown. Yeah, the light forms on the right bay. Now that Mackie is back in